of the Tiverton Town Council and members of the Planning Board, March 31st. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. It is behind you, by the way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Committo. Present. Councilor Burke.
Present.
Councilor Janik.
Present.
Councilor DiMederos.
Present.
Councilor Edwards.
Present.
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor Paul is absent.
All right, so first order of business, only order of business is a discussion. This is brought to our attention by Councilor Committo. Thank you, sir. Regarding the proposed zoning amendments that we had received about a month and a half back from the Planning Board. There's a number of different things in front of us, as Councilor Committo was the one who was adamant about having this discussion. I want to make sure that he has the opportunity to speak first. Councilor Committo, is there any items that you'd like to jump over, or well, how would you prefer to proceed, sir?
Yeah, thank you. Basically, the reason why I've asked for this is to understand all these changes that are here in front of us. I'd like to start at the top and work our way through every single one of these changes and understand what the state law actually says and what we're changing, if we're changing anything. That's just
That works
how
for me.
I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees, but I'd just like to go through.
Yep, without objection.
And as we get to the areas of some questions, we can ask questions.
All right, Solicitor Romano, I'm assuming you'll probably be the one to drive the bus on the Planning Board side.
I'll do the best I can,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
Lord knows our planner's still relatively new, so we don't want to put the onus completely and totally on him, so thank you for coming here. If you would like to take it away from the start, by all means.
I think Council Committo wants to go right from the first amendment, so we can do that.
That would be perfect, thank you, sir.
First one is a definitional change to the term earth removal. And what we've done there is just to make sure it's always consistent with the earth removal ordinance. Earlier in the town ordinances, we just directly refer right to Chapter 38, Article 3, Section 38-56 of the Code of Ordinances. Fairly standard change.
Is there a specific, is this just something like general cleanup that we're looking at here, or is this a?
In my opinion, that's a cleanup and to maintain consistency between the earth removal ordinance and the zoning ordinance.
Okay, not state mandated.
Not mandated, but you remember we had litigation over this earth removal ordinance and so we had a definition that was in our ordinances that governs earth removal, and then we had a different zoning definition where earth removal is allowed or what type of earth removal. So we wanted to make sure that they were consistent. So it's a cleanup, but it's also a substantive change because of the litigation. We felt it actually makes it stronger. It strengthens the town's position in regard to those issues.
Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions from the council?
No.
Okay. By all means, please continue, sir.
The next section, Article 3, Section 5, this is a new section that we're introducing. It's called transition rules, and it just clarifies for everybody what an illegal structure is and what existing legal uses are. We talk about existing legal uses and structures rendered non-conforming. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I will certainly answer any questions that anyone may have about it.
Yeah, I'd like to go
ahead.
through the section and go right down and go through it. What we added, what we eliminated, what you changed, right? So-
Everything that's underlined is new. So as I said at the beginning, this is a whole new
I'd like to go
section.
through it, understand why you changed it, and what the changes are, exactly. So I just want to understand what's underlined. I don't want to interpret it. I want your interpretation on it and why it got changed, or why we added this whole section in.
All right, we're adding the section again to clarify, to set the ground rules for everyone so that there's no ambiguity about Section A, existing illegal structures and uses. And this just clarifies, any structure or use illegally established will always be such.
So this is like a grandfather clause, Craig. So in other words, if because of these changes that we're making in other parts of the ordinance, if something was legal and existing prior to these changes, it's grandfathered all these types of uses and structures. So in other words, we can't say, oh, as of today, you were legal, right? But now because of the changes, you're now illegal. But this grandfathers in all those uses and all those structures that were basically permitted, allowed under the old ordinance. So it's basically a grandfathered, and it just clarifies, you know, they're broken down from structures and uses and then existing legal uses. And it breaks it down into things that were permitted as of right, by special use permit. So it really is just a cleanup, but it protects those people who were legal at the time prior to these other changes that we're gonna be discussing in the future.
So
Does it pertain to a, like, all of commercial, all of residential, if it was non-conforming, not, right, and it was there
All
before?
uses.
Whatever it
uses.
was. So if you
Whatever
had
it
let's make the example, if you had a commercial use in a residential zone that, for whatever reason, just grandfathered in, it was kind of like thrown in there.
Right.
And maybe the setbacks or whatever, or were not quite what they should be under the new ordinance, but they were maybe under the old ordinance, that this protects that use.
If it was put there legally with permits and all the other stuff?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct, yes, yeah.
Nothing's changing with that. We're not taking anyone's rights away.
Just
Clarifying.
Nor
Counselor.
could we, frankly.
However, under B1, the second sentence, if I had something that is grandfathered in, but then I wanted to expand or enlarge it, it falls under the special use criteria now. So then I have to meet those requirements.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, in addition, right, if you expand a non-conforming use, you have to,
That's a permitted use that is now recognized as a use only permitted by special use permit. You now meet the special use requirements to expand it, which are going to be easier than a non-conforming use. Because to expand a non-conforming use, we get to it later, you will require a use variance. And to prove that, you have to prove no other beneficial use. So it just sets out those ground rules for everyone to know going forward. It's great for the zoning officer to know how to interpret these prior uses.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions on Article 3 before we move on to Article 4? All right, let's start with district use regulations, amend Section 4, public and semi-public uses, subsection D, membership athletic club, to permit the use by right in the Waterfront 1 and 2 zones. This was at the request of the council, correct?
That's correct, Mr. President. And I believe that there's a resident who wants to have a membership athletic club in one of the waterfront zones. It makes sense anyways, even if she did not want to do that, for you to expand business opportunity.
and I believe it was previously permitted in these zones, correct?
It was.
Waterfront 1 and 2 before it was, before we updated it, before the planning board updated it. I believe that's
correct.
That is true.
Double check it.
It is true. It is
So
true.
we're kind of going back, so we're going back to where we started.
So that brings up a good point. Like, so if we find situations throughout, we're always able to come back and ask for a change or a revision or something, to add something if we find it wasn't in the right use or the right area, right? We're allowed to do that in the future,
Yes.
right?
Yes, there's a
Always allowed to
procedure
do
for
that. Just want to make sure everybody knows at home that, like, we just did it twice, I believe. Well, we're in the process of doing it twice in Waterfront, right?
Right.
Counselor Janik.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Mr.
No, I was gonna say, as the legislative body of the town, this council has the ultimate authority to amend the code, change it as they see fit. With or with, technically, they're supposed to get the recommendation of the planning board, and they will. You have to go through that process.
Yep.
But ultimately, the ultimate decision is yours.
Counselor Janik.
So the ordinances in our town had not been looked at for 20-plus years. And they really were in need of revision, for lots of people having to go to zoning to have things changed because our ordinances hadn't kept up with the changes in our town. And then with all the changes at the state level, it kind of forced our hand and we had to make these changes. We had to go through all that. It's been a huge project. We're still working on it. We're hoping to be finished by the end of this year with the zoning revision, which is looking at these ordinances, then they go to planning, then they come to the council, and then they get voted on. But one of the discussions I did have with Chris was, why do we wait 20 years to rewrite these? We need to look at these and continue to adapt them and change them and modify them as we go along and as the town needs. So definitely, we can look at that, Councilor Committo, and make changes as they make sense for the town. It's not like we have this one opportunity and it's until 20 years again, because
And
it's
these
just
are not perfect either.
correct. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into these, and we've really tried to look at every scenario so that it would be in the best interest of the town. But like you said, I'm looking at some of these that were given to the council in November, and already some of these need to be changed. So it needs to be kind of fluid.
So I have just a general question, Mr. Solicitor or planner, whomever, would like to answer. When we look at some of these changes, specifically as it relates to the public and semi-public uses and what happened in Waterfront 1 and Waterfront 2, I think it would be, given the fact that we've had 2 instances already where there were uses that would have fit under the prior zone when it was general commercial, and subsequently, as soon as we changed it, it's like a business popped up out of left field and wanted to go there. And I think we all can agree that it's, the right kind of business to have. So I guess my question would be, is what other ones are we missing? I guess maybe I would, ask the planner if that's something you could put on your radar at some point, because I'd rather not have to go back and advertise a gazillion times just to do one-offs.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, and I think what happens a lot of times when zoning does get changed, sometimes there's are inadvertent nonconformities that are created. Other times you're changing the zoning to get rid of certain uses within certain districts. So those are the nonconformities you're looking to phase out. But we see oftentimes these nonconformities that have happened because somebody changed the rules and didn't see what was actually happening on the ground.
Yeah.
So we'll take a look at that and try to inventory those areas.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Any other questions on the membership athletic club? If not, I suggest we look at amend section 16, prohibited uses, manufactured homes, and composting.
So as I explained in the footnote on the annotated version, manufactured homes are a prohibited use in the town. However, we have a conflict in that we do allow the manufactured home, elderly community, and age-restricted mixed-use communities, both of which are allowed to have manufactured homes. You can't have one without the other, so we are trying to fix that here.
Counselor, any of the counselors have any questions on that subsection?
Not that particular one, but can we touch on the composting?
There's no composting.
I thought it just. It says it, right?
Yeah, on our agenda.
I think it
as
was on the
is.
title page. We removed composting, knowing that it was not a good topic to address when nobody was ready to do that.
Okay.
So we could still compost.
This is
Whatever the rules
commercial.
are with composting right now or what they are today. We're not making any changes. Whether you're allowed to or not, I don't know.
You just read it. Okay, thank you.
All right, wonderful. Let's move on to section 22, adaptive reuse.
So this is primarily taken straight from the changes in the general laws. For example, adaptive reuses, permitted uses, it now applies to mills. Why that was left out in the first instance, who could explain that? I have no idea. Same with B3, a requirement for public water and sewer services for adaptive reuse projects. Section 4, we talk about how long it has to be vacant. One addition one change, I'll say, that we have from the state law on that portion is we've included specifically other than schools, because there's a whole different set of statutes that applies to schools, and we just want to make that clear.
Does that mean schools don't have to wait a year to be vacant?
They have a different set of rules
Okay,
for
so-
vacancy.
So this was a element of the state. The state wanted to encourage the adaptive reuse of those structures, right? Schools, religious facilities, medical buildings, mills, which was added, and malls, right? So that was already part of our zoning code, but we had to they had other requirements that we had to put in, so really this is just to try to codify what the state has already required.
So, I'm sorry, Mike, you want to go?
A quick question. You said schools are elsewhere, but up in the,
As to how long they have to be vacant for, and I should have been more clear about that.
so under permitted, you should still want that schools in
That-
that piece?
Right.
Okay.
That's in the general laws, Mike.
They have a different timetable, Mike.
I understand that. I'm just saying, up in 1.1A, it still says schools. So I'm asking if that's intentional to leave in there or not.
It's intentional
Thank you.
there.
Councilor Committo.
So on, that same section, so like number 3, development shall have access to public water and sewer. So if there was a repurpose or a reuse, say in South Tiverton, we couldn't do that because we don't have public water or?
No, it says or, shall have access to adequate private water such as a
Okay,
well and a
my
or.
bad on that, my bad. Okay.
So I actually have a follow-up question on that.
I didn't see the.
Could we strike
Door right here.
everything after the access to public water and sewer? And still be within the rules?
Can you say that again, John?
No, I think that's in state law. That you have.
This is from the state law.
That's right from state law. That's a requirement. So there's a state law that passed that any and all zoning provisions of every single town shall have the following provisions. So these are mandatory provisions that we're just updating our code for. So the state is now saying that's what rural towns do. They have tried to prevent this kind of development because, we don't have city water or city sewer. The state has said, okay, you need city water or city sewer, or you have to demonstrate adequate wells or septic systems.
Well,
And
I
so-
mean, I would just add to that, I mean, I think knowing that we don't have adequate city water or town water or sewer, I mean, my read on this is if somebody wants to come in and build something, good news, you get to put the infrastructure in, like what we do when we sell parcels in the industrial park.
Well, they would have to do that, absolutely. They have to demonstrate that they could have adequate private water or private sewer, so they'd have to be permitted by DEM and the Department of Health, I
Right.
guess, from the water. So they have to make that demonstration. They wouldn't be able to get approval if they didn't, but they need to demonstrate that. But we can't stop them by saying, because you're not a public sewer or public water, you can't even go here. No, they have the right now to demonstrate that they can get a private water and a private sewer system in.
See, I just find it odd, and again, this is soapbox for a minute, but I just find it odd that the state in one hand says on-site wastewater treatment systems are terrible and everybody needs to pay $50,000+ to update theirs, and then turns around and says, well, congratulations, if you want to build some massive housing development, go ahead and use OWTS. So I just, it's backwards. It's one or the other, in my opinion.
But does this just apply to adaptive? reuse?
Correct, this is
So
correct.
these are existing buildings, it's not like somebody's coming in and
not a
saying,
new-
okay, we're gonna create all this development. So actually, from a town perspective, it's a good thing to have in there, because if you have a building in a section of town that really has no other reuse, it allows you that flexibility to use it for housing or something like that, provided they can supply the water or the sewer, or on-site septic system.
I was thinking those at Four Corners and all
Is there an example of something like that, real world?
Well, again, so
Tiverton?
let's say in let's say in South Tiverton, let's say
Yeah.
it had like an older mill-type building that,
They don't.
well,
What about an office? They must have an
you're
office
in an
that's kind
office
of,
building, you can have
Yes.
any of those kind of things, not necessarily like Four Corners in any of those areas, but there are other areas outside of North Tiverton, outside of those sewer and water districts that have a lot of those buildings that would be problematic to reuse.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Religious
Like the Highland Church,
facilities.
there's a church on Highland Road, right?
Right.
I love that church,
Right.
but no one ever uses it. But that would be eligible for
applies.
adaptive reuse, that right on,
Yeah.
when you go to town
And
hall.
usually what hamstrings things in a lot of communities is the zoning. So you have these buildings that were never built for residential purpose that are in residential areas, so they're hard to convert, or they're, different, just allowing for different uses that normally wouldn't be allowed in there. So again, that's the whole idea of the adaptive reuse, is you're able to reuse those buildings, get something in there, provided you have all those other things. So I think to me, it's not something I'd be worried about as I would be if it was just saying, you can build whatever you want anywhere as long as you provide your own water. So I think it's a little more refined than that.
Okay. Any further questions on this section? If not, we'll go on to section 23, accessory dwelling units, I'm sure.
I just want to point one thing out. I went through these with Mike earlier. We have some small changes, adding words, non-substantive words. right? And I assume we'll be able to do that and present that to you before your final vote? Okay.
Is that okay, Mr. Solicitor?
We're not voting tonight anyway, we're just work session. We'll present you with a errata sheet, we call it, and with the additions. Like, we're, for instance, on page 8, number 3, I need the word "a" between legal and a.
Considered
the word
and legal.
Legal and pre-existing, correct, yeah, so. That's all, they're just minor changes. Todd wasn't so great on the typewriter.
John,
Yes.
this question might help me while we're going through all this stuff. Is there anywhere, I know for instance, we just said we followed, on 3 and 4 there, we followed the state law. And that's verbatim, I assume, right? When I
Yes.
look it up. Are there,
Usually, Mr. Committo, usually.
okay.
Sometimes the planning board didn't agree with the way it was worded necessarily, excuse me, in the general laws, because they don't always word things clearly.
Okay, so that
But
kind of
substantively, it's going to be the same.
okay, so that's what leads me into my next kind of question, is throughout this entire document, right, I mean, I still want to go through it line by line and understand it, but is there anywhere where we went above and beyond what the state law was, that we added something in above and beyond what the state law is mentioned?
are
like,
some
on some of
ordinances-
these changes?
There are some proposed ordinances, for example, fences, that's an easy one to talk about, where we've clarified that language. State law didn't change anything regarding fences.
But we added more criteria to it, correct?
I would say we clarified it, actually.
Okay, all right.
But I could give another, but you also have to
So
look.
those, when we get to those types of sections, if,
I will state it again, but I also, in the annotated version, tried to identify every time
I know,
there was a
I'm just
general
trying to
law
see where we
change.
went above and beyond.
So, Councilor Committo, a good example of that is actually section 23, accessory dwelling units,
Yes.
where we have, we can set the size.
Right, so that's a different, that's the reverse of what he said, however. So the state law indicates, so the accessory dwelling unit is this new thing where you can basically have residential units on your property within, and these are also required. You can have a freestanding accessory dwelling unit as a matter of right under state law at a 20,000 square foot or more a lot. So if you have 20,000 square feet on your lot, you can have an accessory use, detached.
Correct.
That's the
The second house functional,
basically the second house.
Yes.
It is, that's the floor, not the ceiling.
the 20,000 square
20,000.
foot
So
lot.
others communities have lowered that 20,000. They said 10,000, 5,000, 4, so that's a policy decision that this council can make. I guess the planning board is recommending keeping it at 20,000.
So-
But you could reduce that, understanding that the more you reduce, the more
Lots
lots
become
of
eligible.
will be eligible for a freestanding accessory dwelling unit.
But you couldn't go higher.
You can't go higher, you can,
4,000.
right,
No.
right, it's a ceiling, not a floor, sorry, yeah, I might have said that backwards.
That's under half
One,
an
only
acre.
one per unit,
Ceiling, okay.
one per lot.
So if I have a house in North Tiverton on a 10,000 square foot lot, I cannot put an ADU on it,
As
according to
it's
this.
written, correct?
Well, it depends. There are 3 criteria. You could, as a reasonable accommodation for a family member,
Square
10,000.
footage alone, I'm saying square footage alone.
no.
Right,
So, to me, we're dividing the town on lot sizes, just on that one particular thing. Like, I just wired an ADU in North Tiverton on a 10,000 square foot lot, so that's gonna become
freestanding,
attached.
so that's different too.
That's different too?
Right.
This 20,000 is for a
Depends.
detached, it also depends, like.
What is it?
Detached.
criteria. It's not just the 20,000.
You can have an ADU as a reasonable accommodation by right. You can have an ADU on a 20,000 square foot lot or greater by right,
Okay,
or where the ADU is located within the footprint of an existing structure
Like a garage,
so attached to it,
or detached.
or detached.
or I put an addition onto it, am I allowed to put an
Yes.
addition?
Yeah.
From scratch? So I have an existing house and I wanna add an addition?
Yes.
Okay.
So-
Well, within the existing footprint of the house.
Setbacks.
Hypothetically speaking, that criteria, let's say I want to build a garage. I can build an in-law suite on the second floor,
Yes.
and you can't stop me.
We can limit the size. This is proposing limiting the size
Yeah.
of the ADU.
Senator,
The height is a different issue. That's a different dimensional standard.
But my colleagues up here are saying it has to be the same footprint, but if I'm adding an addition, it's not the same footprint. Correct? If I have a square house and I'm building to the left side of the
So-
house and
so-
I'm adding an addition,
But Mr. Committo, there are so many variations to the ADU and ways around it. It's really hard to answer a question, right? If you could put that addition onto your house by right, not even as an ADU, great, right? Then you can convert that addition into your ADU because you have an existing structure.
So,
okay, but I'm not trying to, like, so that's being like, okay, I'm gonna put an addition up, I'm gonna have a living room, then I'm gonna change it into an ADU. I
Yes,
wanna
and
start.
that's part of
from-
how this is perverse and how we just need to be honest about it
Well,
sometimes.
that's what I'm saying. So if I come to the town and say, hey, I'm putting this addition on my house, I'm expanding my footprint because I want an ADU, am I gonna be allowed to do that on a 10,000 square foot lot? Now, you said, my colleagues are saying you have to be on the same
no,
foot,
I think they were talking two different things.
Yes.
attached or detached?
So here, so a typical.
No, you don't
So
have to have
I
the
think,
setbacks changed.
Craig, I think you're correct. If you go and want an addition on your house, and you build you say you're building a living room,
Yep.
all right? And there's really no time frame that how long you have to keep that living room. And you, now, 6 months later, you say, you know what? I don't really need a living room. My in-law is gonna move in with me. I'm gonna convert that to an ADU. You're still in the existing footprint of that house. You can put I believe, you can put an ADU in that footprint.
I agree with you, Mike.
And as long as that, of course, assuming that you
But
are
if I did that same project from the get-go, and I went to the town for permitting, and I said, I'm gonna put an ADU on here, I'm expanding the footprint for the ADU. So is it legal or not legal, or can I do it from the beginning?
It's a fair question, but that's where the law gets a little crazy. It's not really clear.
Right, so, and my example is, I just did this
Right.
in North
The
Tiverton.
town has to make a policy decision of whether or not we're going to allow that. In other words, we're gonna have to make a policy decision of whether, like, here's a typical example, right? I have a house today, okay, on I'm gonna say a 20,000 square foot lot, 5,000 square foot lot. I don't have a garage. I decide I wanna build a garage. I build a garage, but I wanna put an ADU in that garage, right?
But again,
I
I
can
think
do-
that's a poor example, because you can't necessarily have a garage. Can
Well, I'm
you?
just telling, but I can have a garage. I'm telling you I can have a garage because I'm building a garage, right? But I really want an ADU. How other towns are doing it, they're saying, come in for a permit, right? Look, I build my garage, right? Now I have an existing structure on the lot. I know you're shaking your head, but this is.
I understand exactly what you're doing.
Right.
We're manipulating the system to get
Well,
what we
it's not
want.
manipulating. The law is not clear, so we're trying to figure out how to get, how best to get it. We have to give you a garage, right? The question is, how long do I have to hold that garage? Because now that's an existing accessory structure on the lot, and I want to convert that.
Yeah.
Does it become an existing structure after I get the framing and
Correct.
the roof
Some
on?
towns are saying if it wasn't existing at the time that this law was passed, you can't have you can't build a garage and put an ADU on it. To me, that is completely.
That's not the law.
To me, that's completely contrary to the increase, the principle to increase housing in the state, right? So some towns are saying if your accessory structure, your barn, your garage wasn't in existence at the time this law was passed, you can't build a garage and put an ADU on it. That's what some towns are doing.
Yeah, which
me,
I don't,
that's-
which
that's
I don't agree
unrealistic.
with.
Huh?
but which
I know you don't agree with.
But
Go ahead.
I understand this principle and exactly what you're talking about. And being involved with building every week in and week out, permits and contractors, we're promoting contractors to be as sneaky as they can. And it really stinks, because it puts a burden on the planning, it puts a burden on Ed that has to answer these questions every day to say, oh, but if I do it this way. And what we're saying here is, yes, put your garage in and we'll change it 6 months down the road and it will go in. But then we'll have a building official come out and say, whoa, stop,
Well,
or the
and
zoning,
here-
right? I get it.
Let me give you a
So
better example.
what I'm asking is there a way just to change this? So from above and beyond state law and say, well, this is how Tiverton is gonna handle it, and say, I don't have to go through the rigmarole of extending my footprint. I wanna put a ADU, I wanna add to my thing, I wanna put the foundation in, and from the get-go, I wanna do the plumbing right, the electrical right, the HVAC right. I don't wanna say I'm doing a living room and then 6 months change it all down the road.
So let me give you a,
Can we go above and beyond it
let
and
me give you,
stipulate that in our ordinance?
let me give you an answer without actually giving you an answer, right? So, and again, I'm not trying to be cute about it, but
Nope.
this is a problem of the law that's been passed. So, I'm your neighbor. I want to build a garage. I pull a permit for a garage. Under our current regulations, a garage could be 6 feet from the side
5
yard?
feet.
6 feet, right? So I'm pulling a, 5 feet from the side yard. I come and build a garage. I have a right to build a garage. I build a garage. It's 5 feet from my neighbor's property.
So-
Hold on,
But doesn't that come into?
Hold on, can I just finish?
Yes.
all right? So my neighbor says, I don't care about a garage. It's great. He's gonna put his lawnmower, his cars there, whatever. I don't care. It's a garage. No one's gonna be there,
I'm
right?
gonna put my race car in there.
Right,
and
whatever
I'm
it
gonna
is,
build
right? My
motors and-
backhoe, I'm gonna put my backhoe in my garage, right? Right? So, no problem, no notice required, no nothing, right? Then he comes, then the person who just built the garage says, you know what? I wanna convert that to an ADU. It's gonna be living quarters. So now I have someone living 5 feet from my property line, right? Now, I don't know if you might like that as a neighbor, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you never got notice that all of a sudden this garage is being converted into an ADU. You might have a problem with that, because you're 5 feet from the property line.
I think we're exactly on the same page, Mike, but what I'm saying is, can we change our ordinance so we know from the beginning, from the get-go, that this is gonna be an ADU? Not from the beginning of the project. I'm not gonna come to zoning or planning and say, hey, I wanna put my garage in, knowing that in 6 months I'm gonna change it, knowing that I'm gonna be on the 5-foot property line. But is there a way that we can make our ordinance better to say, from the get-go, yes, I wanna do an ADU?
If you're building a garage, you're building a garage, and it can't be changed.
I think one of the,
That's what you say.
one of the
More
problems
concerned
is
about
that,
the ADU.
I think the state's requiring towns to treat an accessory structure the same as they would an accessory dwelling unit in a separate structure. So the setbacks have to be the same. So now if you're gonna say, if you're creating an accessory dwelling unit that's gonna be in a part of an accessory structure, and now it's gotta meet the setbacks of that zoning district. The problem with that is that then, if you're gonna put in a shed or a garage or anything like that, that now has to meet the same setback. So if you're in an R30 and you've got a 20-foot setback from the side or a 15-foot setback, you can't even put a shed 15,
That's-
close to 5 feet. Now you have to be 20 feet with a shed. So there's a lot of things in here that I think, based on the state law, requiring the towns to treat those accessory structures the same way, whether it's a dwelling unit or not a dwelling unit, is really what's creating a little bit of just a bit of a difficulty here in trying to figure out how to regulate
So
those.
the law prohibits a town from imposing setback requirements greater than what's allowed for accessory,
Dwelling
Yeah.
not dwelling, accessory
Or
units.
accessory structure.
For accessory structure, sorry.
So
So
you
like a
can't-
shed, right? So a shed can be, what, 6 feet, 5 feet?
5 feet.
So an ADU can't be, you can't say, I want 10 feet. It's gotta be
Well-
5 feet.
But to be clear, we address that later on.
We have a kind of workaround around, but your question is, so I wanna build a garage, I really wanna put an ADU.
No,
Yeah, you.
That's
okay.
not my question.
What's
He
your
wants
question?
to expand the footprint.
I want to expand the footprint to
Period.
put my ADU and not jump through this craziness of saying, right? Because we say we can't expand the footprint with an ADU, is that correct?
You are, no, what we're saying is you are permitted by right, no questions
To
asked,
put the ADU.
to put an ADU in without expanding the footprint, where the lot is 20,000 square feet or larger, residential, or where it's a reasonable accommodation. I don't think that prohibits you from legally expanding your foundation.
So again, if I have a house and a structure from the get-go, a single-family home, a 3-bedroom ranch, and I'm gonna put an ADU in it, and I come to the planning and zoning and the building official and say, I'd like to get a permit, I'm gonna expand, I'm gonna put a new foundation in, and I'm gonna expand, I'm gonna add a bed, 2 bedrooms, and a living room and a bathroom for my family members.
How big is the lot, right?
The lot is 10,000 square feet.
You can't do it under this, you can't do it under this.
Why? It's and/or. I just asked that question before, and they said I could build it under 20,000 square feet if I meet one of these criteria.
Can you make, you don't need any other dimensional relief?
No.
I'd want to discuss it with the zoning official, but I think you're allowed to expand your house.
With an ADU, but you're saying
Right, but I think
it says I can't
You're
expand.
expanding-
I
No.
can't expand.
This is saying you're permitted by right, no questions asked, to put an ADU in without expanding your footprint.
Without expanding your footprint.
Right.
I
I know,
want to
but
expand my
I'm saying-
footprint because I need a foundation to put the ADU in. That's expanding, correct?
It is, but I don't know if you're prohibited from having, it doesn't say you're prohibited from having an ADU because you're expanding your footprint.
That's what I'm trying to find out.
It doesn't say that,
That's
does
what I'm
it?
trying to ask.
And I
Mike
think
is
that-
just explaining to me that I need to go and say, I'm expanding, but I'm putting a garage, and then in 6
Well,
months I
that's a-
gotta
that's a-
change it.
That's a detached structure, it's a little different.
But I think the difference really is that you're allowed to do it within the footprint because the building is already there, right? So they're saying by right, you can do it within the
I
footprint.
understand, in the
But-
basement, on the roof.
Yeah, I know,
Right.
but there's nothing that says you can't expand your building, but again, when you're expanding it, now you have to still meet all the setbacks. So that's why that can't be by right, because by right means suddenly now you're up against setback issues, so.
I have the
So
right,
if you have the room, and you can accommodate an expansion of an existing structure
okay?
within the footprints that are allowed without a variance, then you could do that and do that as an ADU. Is that correct?
And the 20,000 square feet would have nothing to do with it,
No,
the lot size.
No, no.
If
Well,
you
I
can
mean, again-
expand your house legally, you can expand your house legally.
Todd, question.
So-
If it's for a family member,
So that's one of the
we
ors.
don't have to, I know, but that.
For a
also
family
means
member
we don't
with
have to take into
disabilities,
account that we-
with disabilities.
I know, but does that mean that you have to take into account the 20,000 square feet?
No, because I
No.
think,
No.
Exactly.
So, again, you say with disabilities, so I just did it. We just did it in North Tiverton. We expanded the house for a elderly couple to live there that doesn't have any disabilities.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to clarify, like, where we're going with it, because now you're saying you have to have a disability.
No. Number one is by right, no questions asked.
Okay.
Permitted ADU when it's a reasonable accommodation for a family member with disability or the primary use is legally established for a single-family dwelling, yeah. That's A1.
Yep.
Reasonable accommodation.
Yep.
No questions asked.
No questions asked. No questions asked if you have a 20,000 square foot lot or whatever size lot you decide.
As long as the person has a legal disability.
No, that's an or.
or, those are all ors.
Look at A1. The last word is or.
So if I have a 2,000 square foot lot, and I have a family member with a disability,
Doesn't say or.
I get an
You
ADU.
sure do.
If I have a 5-acre lot, and I say I want an ADU for whatever purpose, I get an ADU.
Pretty much.
Done.
You can even get
So,
detached.
wait a minute.
Yes.
No.
I see the or. The or is at the end of that paragraph.
Yes.
So if, with what he's describing, if they don't have disabilities, it doesn't meet one. Correct?
Two others, they
You have,
That's not what I'm asking.
right. It
Does
not
it meet one or not?
It does not. If there's
Okay.
no, if there's no
That's what
disability,
you've
it does
been
not meet one.
Thank you.
Okay. Number two is the 20,000 square foot where I can do it by right.
Yes.
So
You can
if
do
I-
it number one if you have a disability. by
I
right.
understand that, Tom.
Okay.
I understand
have
that.
a
So
twen-
that's what I just got corrected.
By the way, this is right from state law. This-
Okay, I'm getting frustrated because we're going around in circles, and you finally answered that question. That question was, number one, it's limited to having somebody with disabilities, correct?
Yes,
A1.
that's correct.
Okay. A2, 20,000 square feet, it's by right,
Yep.
period.
So if I have a 10,000 square foot lot.
You can't do
I
it.
cannot do it.
Unless you lower that 20,000 to 10,000.
Right now, as this is written,
Correct.
you can't do it.
Correct.
Number three, it has to be within the current footprint of the home.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Or detached structure.
Or, yeah.
So,
So nowhere on here can I have what we just exactly went through. I cannot expand my house on a 10,000 square foot lot to have an ADU.
you might not be able to
No, I
expand
can't. You
your
just went
house.
through everything, and I did not meet one of these criteria.
But you might not be able to expand your house, period, right? What if you have a long skinny lot at 10,000 square foot? You might not be able to meet the setbacks. you know?
Craig,
If you can expand your house, you can expand your house.
Craig, what you're hitting on is that the law does not,
I'm not talking,
it's not clear exactly what you want to do, right? This is where the vagaries of the law comes in. So I agree with you trying to say. You have a house, right? You want to put a living room on. But you
No,
really
I
put
have
an
a house.
ADU. You really want to put an ADU.
He wants number 4, Mike, to
Right.
say, permitted by right, no questions asked, no matter size of the lot, where you can expand by right.
Yeah, and that's, the law doesn't
no,
allow.
that's not what I'm saying, Todd. That's not what I'm asking for.
No, it is.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
I'm trying to clarify.
That's
one,
not what
two,
I'm
and
saying.
three.
All right, go
I'm
ahead.
telling you, I have a situation in North Tiverton, exactly everything I just described, and they have an ADU, but it does not fit into any of these categories.
So what-
So whether it's grandfathered because these rules aren't in place, I don't know. And I personally have a house on a 10,000 square foot lot, and if I want to put an ADU on it and expand my foundation, not within my upstairs, downstairs, on my lot, you're telling me I can't do it.
No,
Yes, you are.
no, can you, let me, see, it's not just.
You're telling me to go to the planning, or go and lie and say, I'm gonna put a garage on and then I'm gonna transform it later on.
listen,
And I think that causes a problem.
Craig, in your personal, in your house, you have a house on a 10,000 square foot lot. You want to put an addition, right?
No, I wanna put an
Okay, you
ADU.
want to put an ADU.
Don't call it an
All
addition.
right, you want to put an ADU.
Yes.
Would that ADU meet all the setbacks of that, in other words, the side setback, whatever? Would it meet as
I guess it
your house?
depends on where I put it connected
Well,
to my house.
and that's the question. It depends. So the answer of whether you're allowed to is depends upon what you're building, is what I'm trying to tell you.
So that's the difference between the by right and the
Right.
depends,
Yes.
really, so. I do have one question.
So then
for-
why don't we just take out the 20, why is it 20,000
detached.
square feet?
No, 20,000 square feet is what's in the general laws right now. If you want it smaller, as Mike said earlier, you can certainly do
East
that.
Providence went to 5,000 square feet.
But I think the top thing where it says by right is really where this is getting hung up. Because you could do what you're asking, but not necessarily by right, because you might not be able to meet all the setbacks to expand into that, that's all.
I agree with that, yes.
So-
On the
One quick
expansion.
question on this, just really on number 1, with the familiar relationships. Is that at all in conflict with prohibited E, where you're restricting tenants based on familiar relationships?
Where?
E, this is on procedural requirements, so E prohibited.
I'm sorry, Director, what page are you on?
So this is on page
11.
11, so it says prohibited, the town is prohibited from restricting tenants based on familiar relationships. So is there a conflict there at all or not?
No,
It's from the general laws.
I know, I'm just curious, though. It seems, you're saying you can have it if it's a family member, but then you
No.
can't restrict it if it's not a family member. That's all,
oh, I see.
that's why I was getting a little hung up on that.
So the issue for
Over
the
a long
council
right.
is,
Right.
you
What
don't have to
size?
decide tonight, what size do you believe a detached ADU should be allowed by right on a lot? Is it 20,000 too big? Can't go above 20,000, but you can certainly reduce that number.
Can you restrict the size of the ADU?
We do that.
We already do.
we do
Okay,
that.
so I think that's really,
I don't know if
I
it's,
have a-
self-control.
I don't know if
I
it's
have,
restricted.
I have a solution, actually, to all of this. Senator, since you're here, would you be willing to put legislation in that exempts the town of Tiverton from all of these ADU requirements?
I wish I could.
You could, but it won't go anywhere, you know that as well as I do.
I'll get you a resolution very quickly.
Based on the speaker, you know that. I voted against all of
They
these.
still said boundaries.
And you're right with a lot of this.
I mean, we're
The
talking
R20,
little lots.
R20 or greater, you're supposed to be able to have a detached
Yeah.
ADU. If it's 10,000 or less, then you can go through the process you solicitor mentioned, where you end up putting up a garage and then years later, you or whatever, you put in an ADU on the attached garage.
All right, so I think we've kind of beat this one, unless there's any more questions on it.
Have
Just
we
one,
solved it though?
I mean, the only real thing that we can control is the lot size. Do we want to take what the state law says is the maximum lot size you can restrict? Or do we want to reduce that number? And then do we want to change the square footage?
My research, those numbers, like somebody said, you said East Providence was 5,000?
Yeah.
Is that Utah?
Mike
That's
said
me.
Right, so, I mean, across the state, that number is different everywhere.
Correct.
It's different everywhere. Just my question was more of a concern if I meet the criteria, the setbacks and all that, and I go in and I expand my use for an ADU, I just rather have that clarified, so I'm not going to see Ed and say, well, I wanna make it a living room, then I'm gonna change it over to an ADU, I just think we need to clarify.
And that's why, in respect, I did suggest putting the number 4 in for you to address situations
To be honest
where,
with you, I thought you were just
No, I was trying to help you, actually, that's
Well, I
why.
thought you were just being.
A number 4, where you can expand by right, meet all the dimensional requirements, that you can have an ADU. I was listening to you.
So
We're not here to stop anything. This is your board. You tell us what you want, we will write it. What we're telling you is that we have state laws that we have followed. This is where this comes from. This is not new language that's created by us. If you think there's a problem with state law, or you want to clarify something, we're
Yeah.
here to help you draft it.
Yes.
But we can't draft it on the fly, but we will give you the language that we need.
I'll do more research, thank you.
So Craig, would you like the number 4 that Todd's
I'll do
suggesting?
some more research on it.
I'll be perfectly honest, I would vote against that.
I'm just
I think
asking.
I think the ancillary run-on effect is that if somebody's gonna come in and get a permit to skirt the law, I'm gonna build my garage and I'm gonna pay my permit fees, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna pay you permit fees again, and that should be the tax for skirting a terribly written law by the state of Rhode Island.
So, I mean, so in Situate, which is a
Yes.
community like Tiverton, this is what they do. Because we don't know, you can build it in an existing accessory structure. You can build it in an existing accessory structure. The legal question is, how long does that legal accessory structure have to exist before you can build it? So again, for my example, if you don't have a garage, you build a garage, right, detached, and you then want to convert that to an ADU, well, it's existing, right? The garage exists.
Or
How long do
even
you have to
attached.
wait? right?
Detached
Or
or
detached,
attached.
right. So I'll just tell you what Situate does. Situate says, pull the permit for the garage. Once you get give us all the plans, and let us know that you're going to do the ADU, and then we'll issue another permit for the ADU. That's,
I get what you're saying, Mike, but like in the construction world, it doesn't really work that way. You know what I mean?
I understand, but.
Right, it's just deception, and that, to me, creates a problem for our building department. They gotta go out and inspect this stuff. They go out and say, well, why is that pipe in the ground? You're building a garage, you can't have a drain, you can't have this, and take it out. It just creates so many problems for that office and the building office. It just doesn't make sense to me. But we can move on and have another discussion about this and be offline with it, whatever. That's fine.
That's fine, it's up to you.
I don't think we're gonna solve it here tonight.
Counselor Janik.
Can we just, if we're done with that, can we just go back to page 8? Totally different topic, and I just want to comment on the parking. Parking is something that we actually have next month coming up on the zoning revision. We're looking at just kind of restructuring and having a separate section for parking, signage, and, what's the third thing?
Lighting.
Lighting, thank you. So that we pull it out and just kind of summarize, instead of having it in each different, like, subdivision and whatnot. At the state level, they're looking at freeing up and liberalizing some of the parking, so it may change a little bit, but just, we're not at that point yet, but just so everyone's aware.
And I do have one, when we get to it, I have one change in Article 10 on parking. Again, just it was something that happened before when they created the form-based codes that never got changed in there, so suddenly some of the provisions that were in there that were meant for those form-based codes don't even apply. So we'll get to that when we get there.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? So I know we're moving off the accessory dwelling units, but perhaps, so you guys can make an informed decision as to whether or not you want to reduce that 20 to a different number. Maybe the planning department can give us a survey of how many lots it would affect, like maybe how many lots would be 5,000, how many lots would be 15,000, and figure out.
It'll be mostly get off Tiverton houses.
I don't know, but I think
Well, I'm telling you,
I think you would
most
want
of
that,
them
I don't know that. I would think you would
be.
want the information so you can determine.
Yeah.
And it might be, because maybe people in North Tiverton want accessory dwelling, maybe it's cheaper, to have accessory dwelling unit they can give to their, kids to live in, because the rents are so high, I don't know, but that's a policy decision, but I think before you make that policy, you should determine how many potentially lots it would affect within the town. You're right, I'm sure it's probably mostly North Tiverton, but.
I have one question for you on this before we move on to section 24. So let's say hypothetically, you had an old house and you have an accessory, garage, barn. And said barn happens to not be 5 feet from the property, it happens to be 8 inches. Because it's an existing building, you can put it in there.
Exactly. The question.
What was the state thinking about?
John, the question that the state doesn't address is how long does
Yeah.
the building have to be there before you can determine to be an accessory structure? Is it a day? Or does it have to be there for 5 years? And that's what the law does. So some towns are taking the position that if the accessory structure was not in place at the time this law was passed, you cannot convert that to an ADU. I don't think that's what they intended, but that's what the law, that's what some towns are trying to enforce because of the issue that you just raised.
And I think the other thing with that is if you've got the increased setbacks for an ADU
Correct.
and you have to treat all accessory structures the same, that accessory structure is now gonna become legally non-conforming and you won't be able to expand it to create an ADU.
It's all related. It's not as simple as like,
No, it's not
it's
simple at
impossible
all.
to write a code to anticipate every example that you can.
Well, and I think part of that one in particular is the state's requirement that you treat an accessory dwelling unit the same as you would an accessory structure. So you have to treat a garage, a shed, everything the same way you would that. So, you're not worried about somebody having a storage shed 5 feet from your property on the other side, but having a living quarter right there might give you some pause.
I mean, I know of scenarios where we have accessory structures, storage structures, and we're putting ADUs on them, accessory ADUs on them, so we're already in that situation.
Right.
Right, multiple times. And so I also think there's areas where on a lot, we have 2 ADUs on a particular lot that are brand-new construction. Like,
That
I
you
don't-
can't have.
Well-
Under the law, you could have one
One per
ADU,
lot.
one per lot.
We might have a couple of locations where there's 2, and I just don't.
That would be
Right, so-
illegal.
So, but what I'm saying is, I think I said enough, but,
Yeah, I think you've said enough.
yeah, we'll just move on. I mean, we can beat this. We just need to come up,
Well,
with
part of it,
something.
part of the issue is once we adopt these, it's gonna be up to the planning department and the building officials to interpret it and to get it and be consistent. I
but
understand.
Mike, that's what's happening in the building world today, when we're out there, and the complaints that I get and the stuff, and it's no offense to Ed and what he does, and now Chris, the new planner, thank you. But they're getting beat up and asked these questions, and they're trying to interpret something, the contractor's interpreting something, and we're teaching the contractor how to be sneaky to go around. I just don't think we should be doing that.
I'm not suggesting,
Right?
yeah, right. I think we should, I think once this is passed, right now, we have very little requirements, right? Because this is not even passed yet. We're following the state law. This is gonna be in black and white. But then there will be policy decisions and administrative decisions that will have to be made clearly as to the very scenarios that you laid out. This is what we're gonna do. But we have to be consistent in what we do. I agree with you, because I don't wanna get involved in something, you got it on this side, but you're not gonna get it. That's not good. We just have to be consistent.
Yes. So what do we follow now? Do we,
State law.
state
To
law?
the extent we can, we cannot impose a maximum size on an ADU today. Because the town has not adopted an ordinance setting a maximum size.
But the state has, does the state have a maximum size?
No.
They don't have one.
It states that the towns shall allow at least a 900 square foot ADU for a single or studio, or 1,200 for a
For
two-bedroom.
2-bedroom.
At least that, so you can have.
So that's what we're
larger.
following now, though.
We don't have a maximum.
We haven't adopted
We
it.
cannot enforce that.
So when you get through this, we have adopted a maximum minimum size. We haven't got there yet.
Which is those same numbers I think that Todd just said.
The
That's
9 and
my
12,
point.
but we can't enforce it right now, Mr. Committo.
I understand that.
Okay.
But, yes, thank
All
you.
right, let's talk about section 24, uses not listed in the table of uses.
We have to go back to the maximum size, we haven't picked the page.
We went over.
We've
page
covered
10.
that.
Dimensional
We
requirements.
jumped ahead.
We jumped ahead.
So let's go to page 10, and what Craig was just talking about, we're talking about.
I thought it was,
900 square foot
At
or
the top of page 10, dimensional requirements.
So
We
we
have
could
control?
expand, we could increase this number if we wanted to, correct?
Correct.
But we didn't.
So just to know, we skipped pages 7 and 8, and,
Oh, sorry.
Those were about the adaptive reuse.
okay,
Yeah, we went through that, I believe.
I was looking at this part, not that.
Yes.
So again, this is another policy decision that you guys have to figure out. Do you want to set, this is page 10. So, number 1, all ADUs shall comply with the dimensional standards for an accessory structure of the zoning districts in which it is located. That is a requirement of state law, because you cannot So if a shed is in an R60 zone, it has to be 5 feet, an accessory dwelling unit has to be 5 feet. You can't make it bigger. So that's basically saying state law, right? So, and then the maximum size of the unit, they're setting it to a studio, 1-bedroom ADU shall be no greater than 900 square feet, or 60% of the floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. That's self-explanatory. And then, or 2-bedroom ADU shall be no greater than 1,200 square feet, or 60% of the floor area of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. As this town has it right now, we just had one before the zoning board. We do not have a maximum size. So this will limit the size of an ADU. If you want to make that number bigger, you can. You can't make it smaller.
Can,
Make it 6,000 feet across the board, and let's move on with our lives.
with this square footage of the ADU and stuff, say that ADU, could they have a garage?
No, no.
An
An
ADU
ADU is a
cannot,
defined term.
A
So
garage
no-
can have an
it's a-
ADU, but an ADU can have it.
Right.
and where did, is that further down where it talks about, I think that's different when it goes further down and it talks about, size of accessory dwelling unit, I think that's different than the ADU, correct? Where it
Correct.
talks about the garage size,
Correct, that's different.
that's different, correct?
So all of these are
Correct.
based on a percentage, really, the maximum or a percentage of the primary structure. So if your structure was 1,000 square feet, your accessory dwelling unit for a 2-bedroom couldn't be any more than 600 square feet. Is that correct?
No.
60%?
I'm sorry.
So if you, so on number 2, if you
Oh,
look
sorry,
at
yes.
2-bedroom, and your existing structure was 1,000 square feet,
Yes.
How much? 1,000?
1,000, your ADU couldn't be more than 600 square feet.
No, no, it could still be 1,200 for
1,200,
two.
It says whichever is less.
No greater than 1,200.
That's why I was curious.
Whichever is less.
So when I do my math, less is 600.
That's,
You gotta take the smaller of the two numbers, whichever is less.
Right.
Chris is right.
Yes, that definitely needs to come out.
so it controls it that way. So
And that's
the whole idea is the accessory is somewhat subservient to the primary structure. Otherwise, you're building something bigger than your house.
Being 2 houses on 2 lots, like,
Right.
But that's a,
Well, if you need
I don't even have to discuss now, but that's
That's a
something that can.
controlling
Yes,
mechanism.
but that's something that can be changed by the town.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay,
So
so
both
can-
the percent and the square footage,
You can make them, that's the
Bigger.
minimum. You can make them bigger.
Right.
You can't make it smaller.
so you couldn't
Go
go
up.
to, you couldn't go to 40%, you can go to
But you
80%.
can go to 80%, you can go to 100%, but you can't go up, but you can't go down.
Can we go back to where, I think I missed it about the garage, is it clear where it says no garage? Is that,
So
under- is that listed?
Mr. Committo, it's not clear. I would say it's clear because the definition of an ADU is
Okay.
as a living facility, which would not include a garage. A garage is not a living facility.
Okay,
An ADU provides complete independent living facilities for one or more persons.
okay.
In
Thank you.
fairness to
That's-
Mr. Committo, I will say that some towns allow a garage in ADUs. Whether it's.
An ADU is a residential living unit on the same lot where the principal use is a legally established single-family dwelling unit.
So, in other words, if I want to make my ADU smaller and add a stall for my car, because I like my car out of the weather, I don't see why we couldn't be able to do that, as long as we're within the setbacks. Right? So instead of me having a 1,200 square foot ADU attached to my house, why can't I cut that in half? I need a 1-bedroom, a little kitchen, a little thing.
You can have it smaller if you want to, Mr. Committo.
What I'm saying is, I want to make my ADU smaller, I want to cut it in half, but still be under my 1,200 square foot, and I add a stall to park my car.
Wouldn't the garage be, even if you put the ADU above it, the square footage of the garage itself, I don't think would count as part of the ADU. The ADU is that living
That's
quarters.
that's how some towns do it, yes. They take the percentage of the living unit, they don't count the garage.
All right, thank you.
It's the footprint.
What you're asking if you can have a garage with your separate ADU, correct?
Or attached.
Underneath.
Just assigned to the ADU.
You can do it underneath.
Assigned to the ADU.
Assigned to the
yes.
ADU. I don't think you can, because of the definition of what an ADU is.
Okay.
Well, what if the
But you do have
footprint,
to
what if the
provide
footprint
parking.
was within a legal size, and you built the residential thing on top of the garage? As long as the
That's-
footprint is the right size.
But what is the garage serving? Is it for the primary structure or for the ADU?
ADU.
The ADU. But what would cause that? I mean,
This is a gray area of the law.
yeah.
This is where a policy decision comes up.
But I think a
This is-
garage by itself doesn't have to be assigned. You're building a garage on your property.
I will tell you
doesn't
that
have
in the
to be
city of East
assigned.
Providence, we allow an ADU with a garage. If you're building new, we allow it.
It's gonna be a matter of enforcement. How can you enforce it?
I have a question.
Very difficult.
And it may be the only place you can provide the parking that's
Correct.
required.
The older you get, the elder you get, you wanna be cleaning your car off, you want it in the garage, you go out in the rain, you go out in the snow, you're in a storm, you don't wanna clean your car
I don't
off.
think there's anything wrong with putting a garage underneath and putting the living unit up top.
So,
You have the driveway for it.
hypothetical for you.
Okay.
But you couldn't
Something to look
do,
at, that's all I'm saying.
just so you know, you can't do, you couldn't do those separate. You couldn't do a garage and then a separate accessory dwelling unit. It's gotta be one accessory structure on the lot, I think.
One accessory structure total.
Yeah.
So if I build a detached garage, and then I want to build a separate detached ADU, or put on or build a shed,
A shed you could do.
Can you?
no, my
That's not
point,
what he's suggesting.
if you have an ADU, that's it, you are tapped out for accessory buildings. I want to build a chicken coop, I'm out.
I don't agree.
Then again, John, give me that question, copy.
All right,
Chief is laughing and I'm.
let's say,
Solicitor needed a moment of Zen.
let's say,
But can I just say this? All these are very valid questions. Okay, we are dealing with an imperfect law that was passed by our good friends at the General Assembly.
not Senator Phelan.
Not
He
Senator Phelan, he voted
against it.
against it. But I know that this is frustrating. Picture us as lawyers, how frustrating it is for us, because we have meetings amongst the solicitors, and these questions are asked across the state. And there is not one good answer that we can give. Do I wish they had clarified it? Yes. So we are trying to do the best we can with the law that we're given. Some of these questions are gonna default to the policy and the enforcement of the zoning officer and the building official.
I have,
So, go ahead.
so now I have a separate question. Just obviously, state law can be changed, it can be clarified. We know there's gonna be changes in the next election. If new blood gets into the General Assembly and they decide, you know what? The person who drafted these laws was apparently asleep at the wheel and we think they're all junk and we're gonna throw them all out. What happens then?
That would be like a miracle of miracles. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. We
You
don't.
can change your
Nothing
ordinances
gets
as many
fixed,
times as you
ever.
want to.
Yeah. Once it's there, it's very hard to change it back.
Yeah. It only gets broken, it doesn't get fixed.
Well, I don't know about that, Mr.
Senator,
Mr.
lead
Chair-
the way.
Mr. Chairman, I think I was on Mr. Chairman's hat, but it's very difficult. I mean, these have been embedded, right? I mean, this is now the third version of housing bills that we've been dealing with.
And it's imperfect.
And they're imperfect, and you're never going to be able to legislate for every perfect example that you can come up with. It's just impossible. So that's why you have to rely upon the officials that are in charge to enforce it, the planning department and the zoning officials, and frankly, the solicitors. But these are, I know you guys are frustrated, I can sense it in your voice, and we get frustrated too, but we can't, we're doing the best we can with the laws we have. So like, Todd and I disagree. I agree with Craig. I think if you have an ADU, you can put a garage in it.
Thanks,
Right? And
Mike.
you- Right? So, what do you say?
So,
My residential living units.
I know, I understand, but
I don't know what I'm more excited with,
I don't know.
the garage or you disagreeing with Todd.
It happens.
I'm teasing, I'm joking.
So my question, the question that I'd asked was, if I have my single-family house
Yep.
and I have a garage,
Existing, garage is existing already?
let's say I don't have a garage, but I have a shed.
Yep.
Now I want to put up a standalone garage.
Yep.
Right? Now I want to do a second I want to do
One.
I want to do an ADU that's separate from the garage. I can do that.
But how big is your lot?
Doesn't matter.
20, yes, it does matter, because you put it as a matter of right on a 20,000 square foot lot,
Yeah.
so you can, yes. I think your question is, can you put 2 ADUs in the garage and the shed? No, you get one per, you get one.
No, he wants an
Hypothetically,
ADU separate,
Yep.
a garage separate.
Yep. Depends how big your lot is.
So you're up to 3 buildings now, right?
yep,
Yep.
And then a chicken coop
yep. I'm just
and
asking.
a
the-
shed.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, we
And that's
would,
possible as long as you
You have
have,
to look at lot coverage.
yeah.
so from a state law, no problem, but from local law right now, we have, unfortunately, we have a performance standard that we could change that says only one accessory structure per lot.
Oh, there's,
That's the point
That's
that I was
the
getting
town
at.
of Tiverton, that's not state law.
and that's existing law.
That's something that's on our books right now.
One detached accessory building is permitted per lot.
You can have one chicken coop, that's it.
So as of right now, if I have a shed, I can't put up a
No, you have to.
standalone garage.
Correct. So, But as part of this, you may want to
You
think
can
about
attach it to
removing
the
that.
Chris,
Then you can get at it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail us.
Yeah, but the ADU supersedes that.
No, the ADU just basically says that you can't treat the ADU.
No,
different than
but
you can an accessory.
if right now I have a shed that's detached, I can't do a detached ADU, is what you're
Correct.
saying?
Right.
Okay, all right.
What's that?
Is it permanent structures or non-permanent
It just
structures?
says accessory structures,
Okay.
Where does it say that?
right here. It's in performance standards. Accessory, one detached accessory building is permitted per lot.
And again, right, we have that same situation in South Tiverton, right?
Yep.
We have an ADU, 2 accessory structures, and a house all in the same lot, right?
We also have, you know, pre-existing non-conforming,
Right, so
lots that
it's,
have multiple primary,
Right.
residences on there, so, you know.
I mean, so I'm under the theory, like, so if I have my property and I want 2 garages on my property, I should be able to have 2 garages on my property. That's it. If I have the setbacks, the room, the area, and this is why some of these changes in here that I get a little compassionate, like emotional, and like, I don't want to be taking land away from the people, right? This is our land. I should be able to have, if I want the chicken coop in a garage, I should be able to have it.
Yeah.
We just got to figure out how we can get there.
I mean, it's up to you.
I mean, so-
Your current ordinance does not allow that. We didn't make that change.
Right.
I'm not arguing
No,
that
no,
point.
this body
This
did
is
back
just
in
all part of
2016.
the conversation, that's all.
So, I mean.
And I go into the building official's office, again, I'm gonna keep saying this, they have to deal with such a process and everybody's interpretation, I don't know how they do it, to be honest with you, I get the calls from the contractor saying, oh my God, I can't do this, I can't do this. And they're answering these questions to the best of their ability, it's absolutely, it's just not an easy process to go through it all. Sorry to keep repeating myself, but it's.
All right, let's hit section 24.
Yeah.
Which is what page you're on, John?
Page 12.
12.
Amongst the changes that the General Assembly has made over this couple of years is allowing uses not otherwise listed in the use table. The standard was always that if it was not listed, it was prohibited. They've changed that to allow somebody to come in and prove that their proposed use, which is not listed, is otherwise of the same character intensity as an existing use. So we've just clarified that to follow state law. We've also added some procedure as to when that could be done. So for example, if you're proposing a use that is only allowed by special use in the industrial zone, then that's all you get for your proposed use.
So hypothetical example. Area zoned residential.
Yeah.
But it's not zoned for 55 and older. Somebody comes in and says, well, it should be, if we don't have any regulations on it. And they get to make the argument and do what they want to do.
They get to present to the zoning board that their proposed use is of the same similar type, character, intensity as a listed use.
Got it.
So this is really more for business uses instead of residential uses, so I'm trying to think of a way to describe this. So we have the Cat Cafe, right, whatever it's called, that's let's say we have a used Cat Cafe, which is allowed in the Waterfront 2, so, and it's allowed, right? Someone comes and wants to have a
dog cafe.
iguana cafe, right? Now, we don't have an iguana cafe listed in our ordinances, so it's under the state law, or the old state law, it would be prohibited. You were not allowed to have an iguana cafe. Hold on. But under this change, the person who wants to put iguanas and have a cat would be allowed to petition the zoning officer to
Zoning
say.
board.
The zoning board, saying, hey, you allow cats, right? I got iguanas, it's the same principle, I'm gonna come in, you're gonna have tea with the iguanas, where you can have tea with the cats. Shouldn't this be in this, shouldn't I be allowed to do this in the waterfront zone? You already allowed cats in the waterfront one, I want iguanas in the waterfront one, and the zoning board can say, yes. without having to amend the zoning code.
Salmonella's a
So,
I think this is actually a really good.
I think it's
provision.
very good too. It's
Because-
pro-business, actually.
Yeah, and because when I was doing the rezone for the city of Albany, it's again, it hadn't been done in 50-some years. We had a consultant that came in, and he basically said, by the time you list every single use you can think of, there was gonna be 4 more that popped up. So in that case, we had a provision that was similar, except for it was a chief planning official that could look at that and
Yeah.
say, okay, that use is exactly like the other one in terms of its traffic impact, parking, noise, all those other things, so,
So hypothetically speaking, if we had this already adopted,
yep.
and in Waterfront 1 and 2, you could have a doctor's office. Then when somebody comes in and says, I want to open a veterinary office, they could make,
Veterinary might be a
But you
stretch,
might- you
but
might-
doctor, chiropractor?
yeah,
Dentist?
But you might say a veterinary office is different because you've got dogs barking, you've got different.
but at least they've
different
got the ability to argue.
But you got a chance, you can argue your case at least,
Okay.
and it's not a use
This
variance.
is a good change.
I like this. All right, any other questions on
Yes,
this one?
yes, yes.
Yes, Counselor Committo.
So, if a use, no matter what table or what, any table, if a use is not listed, and somebody comes to use that use, or somebody wants that use, is it automatically allowed because it's not listed?
No, no, they
It's
have
not
two
state law?
options.
Is that what we were talking about earlier, Deb? Any use, not just here, any use
That's not listed.
that's not listed, so if I had a certain zone and I want to put something there, just like Chris just said, you know, you can list everything, but that form will pop up. Does that mean that if that use is not in that list or that table, it can by right automatically?
No, not by right.
It's opposite.
I know this is saying opposite, but I just want to clarify.
Right.
I'm trying to clarify what
So basically,
me and
what you're
Deb
gonna
talked
do is,
about.
you're gonna find a use that is, you think is similar,
Similar,
that is
right.
permitted in that zone. You can't pick something that's not permitted.
Okay.
And you're gonna explain why those impacts of the use you wanna do and document why that's, should be treated the same as a use that is permitted.
And it's zone-specific.
Right, so you can't pick something from another zone, something that's not allowed in waterfront and
So
say,
it's not
"Oh, well,
necessarily automatically let in, there has to be something similar, close, or whatever.
So,
Okay.
to
Thank
play,
you.
to play devil's advocate here, right, we allow power plants in our PDP, in the industrial zone. Let's say we didn't explicitly exclude nuclear power generation, somebody could come in and make that,
They could try.
okay.
Well, if it's prohibited, if the use is specifically
so,
prohibited.
yes.
If it's on the list as a prohibited use, you're done.
Yeah.
You can never get, if it's on a prohibited list, you are absolutely done. It's only when it's not on the prohibited list. The protections you have, for instance, the gas stations right now in this town, I think, are on the prohibited list, correct? Yeah. No one can ever build another gas station in this town right now.
I actually have a follow-on question to that, now that you mentioned it, because we did ask the planning board to revisit that.
We gave them an extension.
Okay, I understand we have, but that does need to come back in front of us at some
That'll come
point.
back. Not right now.
Understand prohibited is different than not listed, right?
But some zoning
Which means having
will say
horses
that
is not allowed in the
not
town of
listed is
Tiverton.
treated as prohibited.
It's not listed. They're not,
That's different.
it's not that, they're prohibited, they're not listed.
I thought husbandry was specifically on the prohibited list. That was one that, yes, that's one of the ones that Councilor Committo had called out.
That was campgrounds.
You want to be married and have.
No, there was multiple. Yeah, there was like 35 different things that were explicitly prohibited. But I'm sorry, I'm running afoul of the agenda, so my apologies. If we have no more questions on this piece, let's move on to Article 5, District Dimensional Regulations. Amend Section 1 Dimensional Regulation Table as to the PFD and TMS zones.
This is because later on, you will see that this General Assembly has allowed for substandard lots of record, you to have the option of allowing that substandard lot of record to use dimensional standards for a similar zoning district, right? So you have some lots which were under 10,000 square feet, although located in the R120 zone. The question was presented then, what is the front yard requirement? And under this, they could have 0 to 10 feet, right? That doesn't make any sense. So what we've done is suggested a footnote that the 0 to 10 feet front yard or 5-foot side yard only applies to those properties on Main Road if you were to apply the TMS dimensional standards otherwise.
Okay. Counselor?
This doesn't pertain to exactly what we were just talking about, that this frontage? Or is this where it talks about understanding, like, so if I have, again, I'll use my house in South Tiverton, when you come down my street, my road, I have very small lots, and then I'm connected to an R120, and then there's 50, 60 acres up there. Is this where it talks about dimensional relief where,
That's later on, Craig.
this is different, right? So this is strictly frontage?
What you want to talk about there is the substandard lots of record. This isn't just frontage, though.
Okay.
This is for applying the TMS dimensional standards to any lot outside of Main Road. All right? So if you have your 10,000 square foot lot, let's assume later on this council decides to adopt the provision that you can use the the dimensional standards of a different zone when you're a substandard lot of record. And the closest zone for you is the TMS zone because it's 10,000 square feet, right? Does it make sense to have a 0 to 10 foot frontage in South Tiverton? Right, nor does it make sense to make a 5 foot side lot.
To get into, frontage to get into somewhere or anything like that?
Frontage and front yard are different. Frontage is the length, right. That doesn't address this at all.
Right?
This does not address frontage at all, only front setback and side setback.
But you understand where I was going with the other thing is later on, you're saying where,
Why don't we wait until we get to the substandard lots of record
okay,
to make sure we're on the same page?
yes.
All right, Article 6, other district regulations. We've got,
So these are accessory structures, not ADUs, these are sheds, garages, stuff like that, so.
Right.
chicken coops.
Chicken
Page
coops,
16.
exactly, yep.
Article 5, page 16.
Page 16. Yes.
Can we just go back?
Time marches on, Counselor.
sorry.
I'm just kidding, go ahead.
I'm gonna march. Page 14,
Yep.
H.
Yes.
So this discusses commercial, industrial, business use which abuts a residential district shall maintain the abutting property line. It talks about the building setback be less than 30 feet. So apparently, this was discussed at the zoning revision committee prior to my being on it. They apparently voted that it be, as I talked to different people, either 200 feet or 250 feet. The minutes are not, I couldn't locate them.
Here should be 200.
Setback would be 250 feet, you said?
That's,
This is,
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
this is talking about the space between,
Yeah, the space between if you have a commercial or
Property
industrial
line.
business
And a
that abuts a
residential.
residential district, correct?
yeah,
Will
This is a
maintain at the
specific
abutting property
neighborhood
line, the
request.
greater
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
setback of the building needs to be 200 feet from that line, that's half the lot, probably.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I think that's, because almost all of your commercial backs up to residential. So if
Are we
every one of
talking
those has to have
industrial
an
park here?
increased
yeah,
setback,
yeah, we are.
you're
And
gonna
that was
really reduce the
specifically,
amount of commercial you can do.
so what is the buffer between commercial and residential?
that's why we have this now, to ensure that there's at least 30 foot.
That's
At
a min-
least
that's a
30.
minimum, but the performance standard could say more than that, correct?
They can do whatever they want, but
What should the
Performance
buffer,
standard for specific use, yes, Mr. Committo.
But-
It could be greater in that,
Depending what the use is.
yeah, in that,
Right, depending what the use is.
yes, thank you.
so
So-
I would argue the flip side of that is what should the buffer for residential be between them and commercial? Rather than put the onus on the commercial properties, many of
Right.
which have been in business in town for a long time. If you're gonna build a house next to a commercial area, maybe you're the one who should be 200 feet away.
Right, there should be that space between residential and commercial, and whoever's there first, the other one needs to be set back.
Well, if you're building a
Counselor.
residential structure next to an
I mean, if you have
adjacent
a
concrete
small-
plant, that's your choice.
Yes, I agree with that 100%.
But again, in the commercials, you're adding, right now, I think most of them are about 20 feet, general commercial and the form-based code ones. You already have that setback, now you're adding another 10 feet. in terms of that setback, so.
I mean, the big concern here, I mean, it's no secret, is North Christopher. When we build out the industrial park, we have residents, we just don't want all that commercial stuff right on top of them.
Right.
So, you know,
It's
but,
just-
but in the standards, that setback could grow larger than 30 feet, depending on what we put there, or what we, right? So,
Well, minimum, it would have to be 30.
right, and then it'll get greater by whatever the use is.
Right. Right.
Right.
This is what they voted on. I was not
Who's-
there.
who
I
was
was not
they?
part of the discussion. The zoning revision committee apparently voted for this.
You could have
Prior
a,
to my being on that committee, the minutes have been lost, so I'm going by different people saying some thought it was 200 feet, some thought it was 250.
I think you'd be better off in the commercial to work on the performance standards for what happens behind a commercial property, to do that fencing, landscaping, things
Yeah.
like that, than to increase this any more than it already is. Because those lights, many of those lots along Main Road and the general commercial, the neighborhood friendly, the pedestrian friendly, they're not very deep lots. So when you start to squeeze them, there's not much left
Yeah.
development potential for those lots.
I was really form-based. It was really form-based. I'm just an observer, and I wasn't there either, but I think it was based upon the form-based code to widen it.
I just think if you're talking, are we talking about, I think this is all about the industrial park.
Yes.
But again, if it's all about the industrial park,
No, this.
It would say
here is
PDP,
that,
or
but
PD.
increasing it to 200 feet is.
Yeah, no, and that would be the case, because that would have been the last line of defense against the North Point acquisition. Guarantee that's where it came from.
I
Yeah.
can't find any documentation,
But if
so
you
I can't.
change
Well, it's,
200 feet, that's not fair for any other commercial property.
Yeah.
That's what my concern is.
that's why it should go back to the performance
So,
standards.
so if we start with the 30-foot minimum and go, I'm sorry, and I'm talking over you,
No, go ahead.
but then go with performance standards.
I think we have more control
We
with the
can-
performance standards as to what's going in, and increase or decrease, or buffers, trees, plant, right?
With the
That all
buffers, trees,
comes-
plants,
that all comes
berms,
in-
that's all part of the planning process.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can set that
Okay.
standard within that if, no matter where it is.
I can also tell you that the PDP standards themselves are specific to 30-foot side yard setback and 40-foot rear yard setback already.
Yeah, it's a policy decision that this council can decide whether you want to take the recommendation or just leave it where it is, but it's something to flag at a later date. We can go.
Yeah, I like the start at 30 as a minimum and do performance-based.
well, right now, most of the, so you know, most of the commercial, general commercial and the form-based codes are 20. That rear setback.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this 30 came in. Was that something the planning board changed to 30? I'm,
Well, that's
I
the
don't
recommendation
remember.
here. I guess my recommendation would be keep it where it is in the zoning and then work on modifying any of the performance standards so you can address those issues. Rather than just, because even a 30-foot setback, if you're not really taking care of the performance standards, is really not gonna mean anything. You don't require fencing, you don't require any of those kinds of glare protection, things like that, so.
Yeah, giant arborvitae's, all that good stuff.
Right.
You don't want to change it.
For more control, the
Yeah.
performance
Right,
standard, we would
right.
definitely have more control to make sure we have that buffered in the standards when it comes through planning and zoning, and that'd be a great, the TRC meetings.
All right, are we great to move on to, section 2?
No, I just had a question about, we're still,
Oh, sorry, no,
Accessory structures.
we were still on the dimensional regulations table. Now we're on, yard regulations and accessory structures.
Page
section
16,
1.
right? Yeah.
Yes. So crosses out a bunch of stuff and rewrites it.
Can I just point out
and-
something and compliment the planning board on something creative they did?
Yes.
So you'll see the accessory structures. Again, these are sheds, garages. This is not ADUs. These are accessory structures. So, and this is why this gets a little complicated, because it's all interrelated. We said, state law is clear that you cannot impose greater setbacks on a ADU than you impose for accessory structures. That was the 6 feet, right, what we talked about, right?
5 feet.
5 feet, whatever,
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
5 feet, 5, I always say 6, but 5, I'm rounding up.
It used to be 6.
5 feet. So if you look at the rear yard, 2A and 3A, we say an accessory structure greater than 120 square feet shall conform to the rear yard setback standard of a principal structure for that zoning district. This is intended to give you a little bit more setback for ADUs, basically.
Because you know all your ADUs are going to be probably
More than
900
120 square feet.
But you do so at sort of a sacrifice of allowing anybody to put a shed, a garage, or anything like that.
Chicken
be
palace.
Closer than the setback.
Right, you can always, you can change the 120 number, that was just, you know, you can change it, but that's the compromise that we were forced to make because of the state law.
Yeah, so you're allowed, so the 120 is the minimum size structure that
Correct.
would be treated as, under this, right? So you could go up 200 or 300 square feet, so enough for a garage or something like that, maybe.
So let me say this. All I did was take what you have in A and
And-
parsed it out.
Made it easier to read.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And added, as Mike pointed out, the subsection A's as to the smaller structures.
So this was existing already, you just.
Except
for the
little a.
Yes.
That's a direct, cut. That's a direct. As a result of the ADU requirements in the state law.
It's our workaround, so you can still have small accessory structures 5 feet off a property line, such as my shed at my house.
So that brings me over to number 5, where we take, am I correct in saying that the accessory dwelling is what we're talking about, right, with the garages? Number 5?
This is accessory structures.
Right, so number 5 on the next page?
Yeah, accessory structures, not ADUs.
Yeah, I got
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
So
so,
the maximum size garage I can have on my property is 480 square feet,
By right,
so I can go to zoning and say I want a bigger.
correct.
And we hear these all the time. We have barns, 3-car garages, they have to go through the dimensional process.
I'm just concerned about limiting the size and not being able to put the size garage I want on somebody's property.
Well, and actually, you, because we have appointment authority over that board, wouldn't be able to go in front of the zoning board at all,
What are you talking about?
if you were a sitting counselor.
I don't even know what
He
you
doesn't
mean.
want to do that. He thinks you want to do that. No problem.
He was using the proverbial.
No, I'm
Oh,
anybody's
okay.
property. If
All
I
right.
got 3 acres and I want to put a garage
Yeah.
bigger than, if it's my only accessory, because I can't have a garage in the shed, God forbid.
In this,
If I want to put a bigger.
He looks at me like I make these rules and decisions.
I know, it's,
You should be looking at Senator Felag.
He has a,
so Craig, I will tell you that.
Right, so as long as I can go, or somebody, sorry for using me.
Yeah.
As long as somebody can go in front of somebody and say, no, I need a 1,000 square foot garage, we have that.
Yeah, it's two things. First of
I don't
all,
like limiting the size, that's all.
two things. You can get modification up to 25%, right? So up to 600 square feet, you could do a modification. That's in a butters letter, and then it's done, without even going to the zoning board, just the zoning official.
That's like automatically. Is what
Yep.
you're saying. Through the process.
Right, unless there's an objection from an adjacent lot, okay? Then you would have to go to the zoning board.
So Craig, we have never, I've been doing this for 7 years before the great zoning board of Tiverton, we have never turned down a barn or accessory structure that someone's coming in with 480 square feet. Some people have like, you're right, I think it's a little crazy, because you would have a 10-acre lot, and you want to put a 6-stall barn. Obviously, a 6-stall barn is bigger than 400 square feet, they.
My horses.
Right, exactly. So, I could be wrong, but I'm unaware of we ever turning it down. Could it be turned down? Absolutely, but we haven't. I frankly think this is I'm not elected Tiverton to make this decision. I think the 480 is too small,
I
but
totally agree.
that's not, because I think it's a shame that someone has to come to get a dimensional variance from the zoning board for something bigger than 480.
I think what's
Counselor
too
Burke,
small
please.
is the 120.
Yeah.
So the 120 is, anything, so if you picture a 10 by 12 foot shed, any bigger than that, in an R30, you gotta be 30 feet from the rear yard and 20 feet from each side. That's a lot to try to put a shed that's any bigger than 10 by 12. That's a lot of setback you'd have to meet. So I think you may wanna look at that, possibly increasing that to maybe the size of a single-car garage or a 2-car garage, so that'd be 200 or 400 square feet. Anything above that would have to meet those setbacks.
Counselor Burke.
So there is a change from A to the new 5. A says the footprint greater than 864
Yes.
square feet, and the new 5 says 480 square feet.
Yes, you're correct.
Or 60%. So we are reducing it.
That one was changed,
okay.
yes.
Proposed, right.
Yep.
And none of this is final.
Councilor Janik.
Greg,
So I agree with our counselor,
fire
our solicitor. We've had people come to zoning with big lots, and they're looking to put like a 3-stall garage, because they have their 2 vehicles, and they have like a racing car or, antique car, and they have to go through zoning, and there's been a number of them. And zoning board members have asked, can we increase that so that these people don't have to do that? People who meet all the setbacks, who, they have to get all their abutters, and the abutters can't even see where that garage is gonna be because it's so set in the middle of their property.
But the problem is, we have the ADU constraint. We can't permit an accessory structure of 2,000 square feet by right and then limit the ADUs to 900 or 1,200.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And I don't know what the right number is,
Yeah.
Counselor.
State's got us
That's
in
an
a bit of a
issue, yeah.
box.
That's such baloney, because, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, this is terrible. I mean,
Everyone
that's-
agrees with you on that.
I'm not even gonna go on it.
Okay.
But that's the paradox we're in.
I mean, is it this, and we have a rep from the state here now, I mean, is it this difficult to separate an accessory? Why is it so difficult to separate accessory dwelling from an ADU on a piece of property? Why are they so intermingled? Do we know that?
Accessory structure.
The structure from,
A garage from an ADU.
habitability.
Just the way the laws have been passed.
yeah, all right,
No idea.
sorry to put you on the spot. I know he didn't vote for it. Yeah.
I have a question as it relates to this section.
Yes, sir.
Fences,
Yes.
6 feet's arbitrary.
6 feet is the spite fence law, actually. Anything
Okay.
over 6 feet is a spite fence.
Yeah, I'm aware. They put signs up across the street from it, I know.
What was that, John? I missed it, I'm sorry.
The 6-foot high fence, 6 feet's the maximum height.
But we do have 8 feet in the industrial zone listed here.
And what was the reason behind it? Why can't we?
John, the council president asked if that was an arbitrary number, and I said it's tethered to the spite fence statute, which says 6 feet. Anything over 6 feet is considered a spite fence. I don't make it up.
On fences, though, there's no, and maybe I'm missing it, is there a minimum setback requirement from the road to keep sightlines?
4
If
feet.
you're coming, is it 4 feet? It's-
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It
4
says
feet on height.
height, yes.
There is not.
There's not.
By law, though, you should only be able to build a fence on your own property, and there's going to be a natural,
No, if I come out, if I had a fence,
yeah.
my neighbor had a fence up to the street, I can't see what's coming down the street
So there was a
easily.
zoning, or there was a clearance requirement.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, okay.
Line of sight.
Go right to the street, you have to do that 10 feet, I think it's 10 feet.
There's a sort of a triangle that they draw up.
No, if you want to go right to the street, you plant hedges and then they naturally grow out.
Yeah,
And then it's not a spite fence when it gets over 6 feet. Because it's alive and growing.
it's a spite hedge.
So, how did this change come about? Was there a problem, or was there just
I think this is-
clarifying? or-
This is clarification to make it easier for everyone to understand.
This is not part of state law,
This is correct.
Yes.
Okay.
We had to create some standards.
Departures from yard requirements?
Can we just go back, I just want to point something out, sorry. Page 18, section 6, I just want to, so I did have a concern about this, increased fence height. Increased fence height may be approved by the zoning officer pursuant to Article 10, Section 7, modifications to dimensional requirements, or by the permitting authority by dimensional variances. The zoning board of review or planning board in a unified development review may, I think it should say, may require increased fence heights. In my opinion, again, this is just Mike Marcel speaking, not as an elected official, that puts too much control and discretion in the zoning and the planning board. what if the planning board or the zoning board says, I want a 15-foot fence? There's gotta be some kind of
Rationale, yeah.
rationale
What
behind it.
number was you reading?
And I think that would open up the town to some litigation, because in this yard, they required 12 feet, and then this guy, they got 14 feet, and why, it's either gonna be standard for everybody, or whatever. That's my concern. Todd is gonna disagree with me.
No.
So put this, note this out, Craig, so we disagree again. Go ahead.
No, I think my intent in writing that sentence actually was to allow the zoning board to change fence heights, just like a dimensional variance.
Above.
Just like a dimensional variance, though, if the applicant is seeking
Yeah. I
a
agree.
dimensional variance.
I agree with
Not
Todd.
a requirement from the planning board on an applicant.
So
That
then,
that was my intent,
so
Mike.
then maybe you need to add by a dimensional variance. They just can't unilaterally get,
But that's why it says in unified development review.
Right.
Unified development review
So
is when planning board is considering zoning variances.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Todd. I think I should be able to go and say I need a 8-foot fence and not a 6-foot fence. Case in scenario is Russell Drive, we have a swimming pool in the backyard. The neighbors, I want more privacy in my pool. My fence needs to be a little bit higher, because I don't want to see the mess
if
on
you
the other
just-
side.
Just change this, has the right to allow increased fence heights
No, may allow.
instead of require. 'Cause you're-
This is just, my intent, and maybe it can be worded better, was to allow the planning board, as part of its review of an application, to also allow an increased fence height if that variance is requested.
Is it just commercial, or would that be residential?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Anyone
I have a
with
pre-existing
an
house,
application-
I can just come for a variance and say, I get my permit for a fence, I have to go to planning. So if I went to the building official, said, I'm gonna put a fence in my house,
Yeah.
and I wanna do an 8-foot fence, now I have to get a building permit, now I have to go to planning.
No, not necessarily. The zoning
Somebody can
officer
give me
may-
relief to go to an 8-foot.
The zoning, if it's your residence that's already constructed, you want to put up your fence, zoning officer may be able to approve that, or the zoning board. Mike's concern was the planning board having authority to, but what I'm trying to express to you, and I'm not doing it well, I think, is if there is an application, a land development application before the zoning board,
So they would have to meet the same standards for dimensional release as the zoning
Correct.
board have to, okay.
that's why it says under the unified development review.
Are we satisfied, Mr. Solicitor?
Yes. I'll take another look at it, but yes, thank you.
Kind of.
But at the same point, I can still go as my existing house. Doesn't seem like this is gonna apply to me if I can get relief from the zoning officer. Is that correct?
That's right, that's what it says in the first part of the sentence, increased height may be approved by the zoning officer.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Section 2, departures from yard requirements.
That was just to strike section D, because that concerned fences, which we address above.
Okay. Section 11, design standards.
The planning board has adopted certain design standards based on the different zoning districts to try to make things look nice in town. This is just giving them that authority for enforcement purposes. And most of those design standards are based on your prior form-based code. So those design standards actually adopted those form-based code standards and put them into the subdivision regulations.
So I have a question on this for you. If there are specific design standards that we're trying to meet, can the planning board just go rogue and ignore them? Or do they have to kind of figure out a way to fit stuff in? I'll give you a real world example. When former Councilor LeBeau built his gun range, he was required to put that thing up on the road because it was in the Main Street district. At the same time, you had the doctor's office that was built, and they were set back from the road with parking in the front. And so the whole purpose was the design standards were buildings in the front, parking's in the back. And very clearly, just in that case, again, not this planning board, maybe Miss Eva, you were here for, you've been around for a while.
Taking the fifth.
She abstains.
She abstains. So that's an example where it was two projects, like 2 blocks away from each other, 2 wildly different design standards that were used.
I think if that's the form-based code area, so
Yes.
you've got different, what they call transects. So it used to be all general commercial, it was all
Split.
treated the same. At one point, we put 0 setbacks on all of that. Then when the form-based codes came in, they said in the pedestrian-friendly district, rather than a 0 setback, it was a 25-foot minimum. So it's kind of a strange way of doing a form-based code, because typically what you do is you set either a range, you might say setbacks are from 0 to 25, so all the buildings are there, or you say the build-to line is here. And the problem with the 25-foot setback is exactly what you're saying, so one person's required to be at 0, they can't be any further than that. The next person, the minimum is 25, but it's the minimum, so they can even be further back.
Yep.
So it really doesn't do a lot of good in terms of trying to establish what you're trying to do in a form-based code is placement and form of buildings. So it's something that I think probably needs some thought.
Yes.
It was a split zone. And there was opposition.
But now it's not. No.
Well, if we change those,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that being a problem, but it was.
Wonderful. All right, so this basically says, on a go forward, we're gonna do things, everybody the same way.
We have standards.
Okay. Any questions on that from the council? If not, let's move on to Article 7, substandard lots of record.
Just quickly on page 19, waivers, I'm going to propose on number 5, so D5, it says written notice shall be mailed by US mail or better, at least 14 days prior to the public meeting. State law was changed because we used to have certified mail, so state law requires US mail. My suggestion is we just stick to US mail, it's better for the applicants, it's cheaper. I don't like the term "or better" because you could have the zoning officer say we need certified mail, which is stick to what the state law requires as a minimum, and that's US mail. So I'm gonna make that
What about
proposal.
emails with read receipts on them?
No, it has to be by at least, it has to be by US mail.
I saw you open it, I know. Okay.
Article 7, page 20. The first one we'll go to, because Mr. Marcello and I have a disagreement, is section 2D. I like the word unwind a merger. Someone else doesn't.
I thought it was creative.
By law, substandard lots are merged by law if they're in common ownership and adjacent and undeveloped.
We just did that, didn't we just do a big, send notice out to everybody that was
Yeah.
happening, right? We just did
Yeah,
that,
but
right?
this provision talks about unwinding those mergers by applying to the zoning officer.
Now, would that be unwinded because of maybe something in the family? Why would that be unwinded?
They'd have to have a good reason
A
for
new
it.
owner coming in saying, well, I don't want it this way,
Yes.
or?
That could potentially be a reason to unwind.
And you're creating
It
two
could be-
substandards
Or
again.
a
Yeah.
buildable lot can become, by operation of state law, you could have a buildable lot that was no longer built, was now becomes buildable.
Correct.
That's really what the reason is
Yeah.
for the state law for that.
But you're
So you had two substandard lots of record.
Yeah.
Under our zoning code, they were merged. Now, under fancy new zoning law passed by the state, you can unwind them, and you look, even though that was a substandard lot of record at the time, you can now look with a 200-foot radius for other similar lots that have houses of that size on.
Right.
And you can now make that lot buildable by operation of law. So that's why you want to unwind it, so.
So, we're still not at that section yet, but that was where I was going last time, right?
We're getting to substandard
We're getting
dimensions,
closer.
yep.
But your
very
disagreement is on the
next.
term unwind?
No,
I like the term unwind.
Oh, okay.
Someone else doesn't.
Oh,
What would we use, Mike, what type of wording would you?
And don't take his side just because he's your solicitor.
I took your side once tonight,
Have you,
Tom.
have
I
you
know, I
noticed
said-
that they very rarely take my side?
What would you use for a different word, or you just believe it shouldn't happen at all?
Unmerge.
Unmerge?
Unmerge a merger.
Guys,
It doesn't make a difference. It's technical.
why don't we just
No,
take
I'm
the
just
path?
curious, like if it was.
Why don't we just take the path of least resistance? It's dismergify or whatever.
Just mergify.
Yeah, we got a dismergification.
yeah.
Nice.
It's not a substantive change. We had a little fun today when we were going.
I like
No,
Todd's
I think
word.
it's a good,
Either one, it doesn't matter to me.
think it's a
Okay,
good thing
let's
to
get
have
to
in
where
there.
Councilor Committo has questions here, which would be merger of lots under single ownership, or applicable dimensional requirements, those are the ones you wanted to go to, Councilor?
Yeah, section 4, substandard lots.
Do we want to talk about 21, Todd, on,
That's where we are.
okay, sorry.
We deleted
right, Mr.
residential
Committo?
structures and a bunch of other stuff, and we rewrote it for something else.
Because they're down in the new section, the
Right.
underlined section.
Now it's
General
reordered
Assembly.
and readable.
General Assembly pretty much rewrote it, so it was just easier to strike all of yours and do it again. And break out what the General Assembly did to make it, I think, more readable for you too.
So this is where the General Assembly said, if I go through a neighborhood of a bunch of lots of 20,000 square feet, and I'm in the R120 where I have to have 3 acres to build, I can take on that? Is that this?
So what we're gonna talk about are the dimensional standards. Frontage, setbacks,
Yep.
and lot width for substandard lots of record. You have a 10,000 square foot lot and a 120,000 square foot zone, right? You're a substandard lot of record. You want to now build on that lot. It doesn't make sense to require you to adhere to the 120,000 square foot district dimension standards, right?
Yep,
Because those setbacks are way too large for your 10,000 square foot lot.
right.
General Assembly gives you 2 options. One, to reduce your setbacks by proportion, right? Or 2, to use, and it needs some clarifying language, we would suggest it only apply to residential zones, but also the closest residential zone in size. Okay?
Yep, I got that so far.
So you can use the dimensional standards for a other zone that's closest to you in size.
Only if you're doing that on a substandard lot.
Correct.
So that would not take effect for a new lot. So, and again, I'll use my example. I'm in R120, I have 3.5 acres, connected to my property is 60 acres.
A different lot, though?
Different lot,
Okay.
He has a lot of land.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not mine, but it's connected to 60 acres. What I'm hearing is that because I'm coming through that neighborhood, that 60 acres can take on that
No, no.
they can make, I don't know, instead of, if we did the math or whatever, instead of me having 5 house lots up there, I can take on the dimensions of that neighborhood of the substandard 10,000, 20,000 square lots and do that up.
No, not for the 60-acre lot.
So
No.
there's nothing connecting the neighborhood scenario saying we could take that neighborhood scenario of the substandard area, 20,000, and carry that forward in that same area. My understanding is that state law is allowing people to do that.
That's, exactly, you're looking at oversized lots, it's different.
So it's different than,
This is not for this. So B1.
I agree with what's written here, I agree with this.
Okay.
But if maybe I'm in the wrong section again, but that's where I was going, Mike.
You know the oversized lots better than I do.
Yeah, if it's an oversized lot that's not been subdivided previously, you can look at 200-foot radius. And look
Yes,
at-
that's exactly what I'm talking
That's,
about.
that's a different provision of state law. So, right. Let's get to that in a second. but yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I don't want to confuse the two, but I agree with what's here right now.
So,
I understand
I
that.
want to make sure you're clear, I'm sorry, Mike. The General Assembly left it up to the towns as to whether they wanted to use or allow substandard lots of record to use the dimensional standards of the closest other lot. That's your choice. You have to do proportional, whether you also, or alternatively, allow them to use the standards for a similar lot or a similar zone is up to you. That's the
So,
1I.
1I is optional, 1-2 is required.
Correct.
Yeah, you have more options with, right.
But we don't have to give them I.
Correct.
You don't have to give them small I, correct. But I want to point out that I think where the law needed to be clarified, so it says the minimum building setbacks, lot frontage, and lot width requirements of a zoning district in which the lot area is sufficient. I think that needs to be clarified. It has to be the same. So it's got to be a residential lot. In other words, you can't have a substandard residential lot and then you want to use the setbacks in a business lot. It's got to be the same type of lot. The law doesn't say that, because I don't, frankly, my good friends in the legislature, I don't think thought it through, but I think that that needs to be clarified. You can't take a residential lot, right? You're in a residential zone.
Yeah, but,
So you're in an R30 and you can take the 10,000 square foot lot of a general commercial.
Correct, I don't think that's appropriate.
and I think we've already been in that situation. Maybe you could speak.
Yeah, we have.
Where the next,
We talked about it earlier.
right, so the next lot was general commercial, that they, it doesn't make
And they had a
sense.
0 setback in the neighborhood. Didn't make sense.
Yes,
So if you're in the R20, you've got a, let's say, a
right.
30,000 square foot lot in the R120, you could use the R30 for the setbacks rather than the proportional
Correct.
setbacks within the substandard lot of
I
record.
think it's gonna be the lot, the zone, the dimensional requirements of the zone closest to the percentage, closest to that lot that you are, so.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
So-
right.
so-
But-
no,
But
not-
closest,
not-
not closest in proximity,
not in
closest,
proximity to-
closest in the area,
So
right,
whatever
correct,
fits your lot
Correct.
closest, you could
The
use
next
those rather than the.
correct.
In keeping with it.
So that was, how was that situation corrected, like, to allow that house set back
They had
further?
to,
Somebody gave relief somewhere?
go to the zoning board, right? To get the final agreement.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
Yes,
because it was-
because
it
we're
was-
going to require them to have a zero front.
So that means when they did that house, they would have to go on to zero unless, right, because you can't change it, right? So,
Right, which is why.
unless you get
Tom had that
relief.
Other language earlier, changing it, saying,
The TMS,
Yeah.
front setback and side setbacks.
okay, thank you.
And I think the reality is, in Tiverton, you've got, because of the way the zoning's been done, every single zoning district has been just applied somewhat without a real close look at what's actually on the ground, what those zoning, what those parcels are. So R30, there's probably 80% of those lots do not conform to the minimum lot sizes. Same thing with the R120, you probably got 20 or 30% of the lots don't even come close to meeting that requirement. So these provisions are important to be able to provide that opportunity and some flexibility within those lots.
Well, the only thing,
And that's what this change is doing, right? To take care of those,
clarifying and making it-
situations.
For
making it a
existing
little bit-
lots.
yeah, for
yes,
lots.
existing, yes.
It's not allowing you to take land and then suddenly create smaller lots or do subdivisions.
well, I think the whole purpose of why we upzoned a tremendous amount was to prevent like massive housing developments. So,
But
No, I
what,
agree,
what,
I agree.
what happened there, when we adopted all that 120 zone, it captured a whole bunch of lots that are under 120,000 square feet.
my own lot is an example.
Right,
It
so
took
your
the land
lot,
away from the people.
Yeah, I was R80, but the benefit here is that now if I want to do something, I got to adhere to the setbacks for either a percentage or
Right.
what's closest.
correct,
Okay,
rather than having to get a dimensional variance.
yeah,
Still not getting chickens.
apparently. Or garage or chicken coop, I guess, those are my options.
You're out in the
Yeah,
cold.
one or
Actually, I'm out because I already have a shed, so planning board doesn't like me to have anything more than a shed. All right, we're deleting special use permits in the next section. Pretty straightforward. Sorry, spilling on you, Counselor. Any questions on why we're deleting that? Basically because it doesn't adhere to the code.
Did you skip to page 23, though, Mr. President? Article 10, special provisions?
I think he was hitting.
I'm still
Oh, I'm
on
sorry,
22.
I'm sorry.
Yep. You just want to know why that was.
So now we're on Article 10.
Does anyone want to know why we
provisions.
struck that special use provision there? It was illegal.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
Now we're on Article 7, special provisions, amend Section 7, modification of dimensional requirements. Counselor Committo, go get them. This is the one, right, that you've been waiting?
This is similar, it's different. This is neighborhood character-based modifications. He's talking about oversized lots. We did not include oversized lots in these ordinances.
This might be the one that,
Okay,
so neighborhood character.
yep,
So if I'm in a R130 and I'm coming through that neighborhood of, say, R30, pre-existing, and my wife was explaining that.
well, this only relates to building, not subdivision.
existing lots that are serviced by public water and sewer already, and only residential. It's another form of dimensional relief for a substandard lot.
When you say already, meaning when this is passed, what if somebody gets public water and sewer after the fact?
I think this would apply then.
Okay,
Yeah. There's nothing prohibiting it from applying, it just says,
yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because you said already being served.
Powerful resistant possible shall move
right,
within 200 feet,
right.
same base zone. So is that where?
I don't think we've adopted the, are you guys working on the,
The oversized lot?
oversized lots? I don't know if that was a requirement, or is that an option, I can't
We
remember.
have it now.
You have it now.
We're on the general law.
Oh, so-
This is only related to building.
Right.
This does not relate to subdivision.
So Craig, what you're talking about, I believe, is that you have a 60-acre parcel. It's zoned 120, right? You say you can put, I don't know, I can't do the math, but say you can put 25 houses there, based on 120. The minute,
Right?
yeah, whatever, yeah.
3 acre minimums of 2
Yeah.
houses?
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, so, I'm not good at math, but figure,
No, I think, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
6 acres is what you said?
Yeah,
Yes.
3 acres zone.
so right now, you got 100, you got 60 acres, it's zone 120. And you, yeah, you said 60 acres.
Oh, I
I
think
think
it's
it's
6.
6.
Oh,
I heard 6 as well.
You're 6, for simple math, you're 6.
oh, okay, well, I didn't hear,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, 6, you got 6 acres.
Yes. So
And it's zone 120, you can put 3 houses?
2.
2 houses.
2 and a half.
120. However, everyone around that is got, small lots,
Yeah.
10,000 square feet, right? Whatever. You are allowed to, this is not in here, but it's state law, you are allowed now to overrule that little local zoning
Yes.
and use the zoning within 200 feet of that parcel. So you can use the smaller lot size to develop that parcel. You have to go through the planning process, but you can use that smaller lot size.
That's state law.
That's state law.
More houses on
Yes.
You put more houses on it, even though, again, it's an example of the state overriding the local zoning.
That alone is, like, just blows my mind, like, that's just, takes all our rezoning that we did with the R
Yes.
and just vacates it,
Right.
so.
I mean, much like when we,
For some things.
right. Much like when the town rezoned got rid of all the R80 or R60 zones, right? When we made that 120.
R80.
R80 to 120,
Yeah.
and R60 as well, we got rid of it, right?
Yes.
Caveat, there is R60.
There are a couple left, but but now under the not unified development, the affordable housing, what's it called, the
Comprehensive
comprehensive
permits.
permit, that zone doesn't matter either. You overrode it, you can put more houses on those small lots, even though that was our intent was to not have a lot of houses. The state said, we don't care about your underlying zone, you're gonna put, what's it called again?
Comprehensive
Comprehensive
permits.
permit, you can put more houses, you can put more density there.
Basically,
So-
the state just said, we don't care, you're going to have housing
Wherever you-
regardless, wherever we want to put it, because we can't
We
build
don't
it. We don't have enough
address
housing in
that in any
Providence
of
anymore,
this,
so we're
right?
gonna
We-
shuttle everybody out of the city.
And we can't address that, correct?
We can copy it and put it in here if we
No,
want to,
no, no, I'm
but
saying, like,
Oh, what we
we
just talked
can't
about?
change it.
we can't control that. Or with our zoning, we can't say, hey, we can't go above and beyond the state. We have to
No.
always be, okay, thank you.
You're handcuffed.
Okay. So now we're on,
I just have a question about.
Yes.
The last one that we're on, Todd. Remember, there was one thing that John wanted to add in there, when we talked about, width, depth, average dimensions. Did we hit setback for, because remember, we had
Frontage, lot width, lot depth.
our side yard?
Frontage, lot width, lot depth. I remember having a conversation, I don't know what it was specifically.
I think he wanted side thrown in there as well, because that was the reason why it said somebody out there, but just, I guess we can talk about it.
So the zoning officer may be suggesting that you expand the ability to have a neighborhood character-based, whatever this is, modification. On page 23 and 24. On 24, de Madero's, at the very top, number 1, it says, such modification shall only be granted for dimensional relief from frontage, lot width, lot depth, up to the average dimensions of a comparable existing built environment. The zoning official, I think, wants to also include setback to that list of dimensional relief.
Wouldn't that be frontage or no?
No, frontage is the road frontage, how, the length of,
Setback is from the road back to the-
correct. So, that's a consideration for you.
All right, make a note, we'll bring it up when we have the public hearing.
Put it in a memo for us.
Yeah.
All right, Article 14, non-conforming
I've got one
development.
other change on Article 10 that I'm just gonna be sending to you guys in a memo, just so you know. So this was, it had to do with, this is Article 10, Section 1, under parking standards.
Page,
It's not in this,
okay.
but it's basically what happened again was.
No,
What- You don't wanna go in it? I just wanted to,
go ahead and talk about it. I don't know if we can do it if it's not in here,
oh, okay, all right, I'll skip
because it
that.
hasn't been advertised, so go ahead, tell me what you're trying to do.
No, it's just a zoning, I think when they changed the general commercial to form-based code, they didn't include that back in the language for parking, so the parking doesn't allow for the shared use parking because it only references general commercial. And the form-based code supplanted the general commercial in a lot of those areas, so just, I'll send you a memo with some quick modifications.
That's a
that I think
technical
would-
change.
But it can be
It's a
corrected.
clarification. We should do that separately, but yeah.
Yeah, I just want to point that out, just so the council wasn't surprised when they came back up.
All right, non-conforming development, delete and replace all of this with the state's new language. Is that fair to say?
This is more of clarification, actually, of your own ordinances.
Okay.
Of your own ordinances and for the public, so they know what is non-conforming and what is allowed or not allowed.
What is our solicitor concerned about here?
I just had some word technical changes, but nothing major.
There is one particular change. In the non-conforming use, I omitted by accident the ability for relief. This says that expansion is not permitted of a non-conforming use at all under any circumstances. I should have included non-conforming use can be, or can seek relief via use variance.
Okay. Yeah,
If you
you just
have a
gotta go
use
back to the
variance.
zoning board and
Correct.
state your case, and if they disagree, then you sue them and go to Superior Court, and then,
They lose.
Then
'cause
you
we
lose,
win, 'cause
yeah.
we win. We win.
most times. All right, everybody good with that, with this
So that
non-conforming?
is a substantive change that we're making, but it's really a clarification. It was accidentally omitted.
Right.
All right, let's go special use permits, sections 1 to 5. This is Article 16.
What do we do here?
Getting good with the Roman numerals. Yes?
Can you help me understand, and I know you said it was carried over, but B1, about the expansion of quarry?
I'm sorry.
B1 on page 28, the expansion of
Yep.
quarrying?
Yep.
So we're,
That's
now-
the exact language that you have today. And then if you look at section 5 on page 31, that continues about the
Oh,
expansion
there's the
of
below.
quarry.
Okay, there's the below. Okay.
We hit it so that, yes,
Okay.
and also
Yeah, does it
to,
make sense to reference that, though, instead of saying below?
Yeah, I can certainly do that, yes.
Thanks.
and deerskin treaties are not allowed for quarrying, correct?
Same thing.
I'm sorry? We are on page 32 now.
So
Go ahead.
32 and 33, so if you remember, for those who were on the council, a year ago, state law basically said that if you had a special use permit requirement, you had to adopt objective and specific criteria for those special use permits for every use that has a special use permit by a certain date. If they weren't adopted by that date, it was a permitted use by matter of right. We then, the planning board and we took all the special use permits and because we didn't have time to make those specific and objective criteria, we changed every special use permit that was allowed into a not permitted use to give the planning department and the planning board time to come up with objective and specific criteria. I think they're pretty much done with that. Maybe there are a couple stragglers. The purpose of that was to have very specific performance criteria that a zoning board or a planning board could apply if there's a special use permit necessary. Todd tells me, so if you look at section findings and recommended, section 3 on page 33, it says criteria for all special use permits, and you list this criteria, you will note that these are the old criteria. So now we're saying you have to have the specific objective criteria, and you also have to have these. These were not determined to be specific and objective, because this was already in the law. This is where the wiggle room comes into. So in my opinion, I don't think this is correct. I think this should probably be stricken, but Todd will tell you, because he represents other towns that I don't represent, that other towns have adopted specific and objective criteria, and which includes this. So, in other words, can you give me an example of a specific criteria of some special use permit? I don't know, off the top of your head. Maybe not. Just make one up. I don't know.
Industrial use shall have a fence on
Yeah,
side
have
and rear
fence,
yards.
Rear yards, it has to have so many parking spaces or, a ventilation system or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then, so you should be able to check there's a very specific and objective. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, you're gonna get your special use permit. On top of that, now we go back to these old standards on the public convenience and welfare will be served. These are very loosey-goosey standards that the legislature, in my opinion, was trying to get away from.
But they did a bad job writing the laws, so we
Well-
can still sneak them in.
Well, I don't think legally, and no one's ever challenged this yet, but I don't think legally these are specific and objective criteria. These are very loosey-goosey, right? This is.
4 and 5 are
Yeah,
mostly
4 and 5,
specific.
4 and 5 are definitely specific. It's like, right, but, so I just point that out, and you don't have to make a decision tonight, but my recommendation would be to get rid of at least 1, 2, and 3.
Other communities still apply these.
Would it be possible, since you mentioned other communities, that, I assume you represent their boards?
I've appeared before them.
You've
Looked at
appeared
their
before them,
ordinances.
okay. Would it be possible if you could just shoot us a couple of examples?
I can tell you Westerly does.
Okay.
I think another option with special use permits in general is to really take a look at all of them and to look at which ones you think it can move out of the special
We
use
did.
permit again.
Yeah, they did that originally, but there could be more.
So that's what most communities have been doing, even outside of Rhode Island, looking at, and, one of the ways to do that is really looking at the conditions you've applied to special use permits in the past. So a lot of times the boards will allow something through a special use permit, then attach conditions, so you can look at just the history of those to help you with those. But again, if there are definitely certain ones that are hard to figure out exactly what those criteria would be.
My humble opinion is if we leave these in here and someone would challenge these, there would be litigation over it. I can't say we would win or lose, but I don't think if the purpose of them was to get rid of special use permits by having specific and objective criteria, and you're leaving them in here, I just don't think that flies, but I'm not a
wholeheartedly
judge, and so
agree.
we have to figure that out, so.
Does the special, or the criteria have to be the same for all special use permits?
No.
No.
And that's, and
No,
that's,
that's
you
where
think
section,
that's why it says specific and objective criteria for
Okay,
each
so you
special,
can- yeah.
right.
well, and then there's section 4 where there's nothing in there that has criteria for specific categories
Well, no,
of
that's
special use permits.
existing.
Discontinued.
We didn't, that continues on, we didn't
Okay.
list.
Yeah.
If you go to the zoning ordinance, there are a bunch of uses that say
All right.
you have to have this specific and objective criteria.
But that's where we would, if we strike these criteria for all special use permits,
Yep.
and we had a specific thing that had a special use permit that now,
Yeah, I don't know how many special use permits are required, how many uses have special use permits? We can look that up. We don't,
There's a lot less now.
there's a lot less, but they're still
Yeah.
there.
yeah, like animal husbandry is not a thing we can do anymore. Councilor Committo cannot have horses.
No, we're talking about a special use permit.
We're getting there.
It's not permitted.
It's not permitted because
No, no,
the
I'm talking
special
about
use permit was taken away.
Oh, okay, right,
In the district use table, it says no.
right.
Across the board.
Did we
What?
fix all the
We did.
premises?
I
We did,
hope
right?
so.
Well, no, I think.
Oh, no, the
Yeah,
animal
right,
stuff
right.
still, right.
Yeah, that's going on.
All right, let's go on to Section 18, Enforcement and Administration.
That just
Section
increases,
1, Zoning Officer.
increases the number of days in which the zoning officer must provide his zoning certificate
Okay, are we good with that, Councilor?
by state law.
All right, vested rights.
We encountered a problem before the planning board. It was a problem with an application as to when that application vested and what ordinances would apply.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
Can we go back? I mean, we just went through that real fast there. So we increased it from 15 days to 20 days?
But that's the state law, Mr. Committo.
Okay, I mean, if it's state law, but we know,
What?
I just don't want to hinder the process of, like, we've had problems in the past. I just want to keep things moving, and it just seems like if it's state law, they added 5 days, they added 5 days. All right, I'll let it go, thank you.
I'll say this also, though. Zoning certificates now apparently have some weight to them. Previous to a change in the state law, they meant nothing. Nobody could really rely on them, which didn't make any sense, so why would you ask for it? But now by law, they have some weight. So I'm not terribly opposed to giving the zoning officer a few extra days to make sure it's right.
All right, so let's talk about these vested rights.
So,
And I
planning
think we
board-
all know which specific incident we're talking about.
Good. So it was vital because they filed a complaint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
They filed a complaint about being vested under prior ordinances, prior to the conservation development ordinances being adopted. We were able to work that out. They are applying the conservation development ordinances to their project.
This helps us administer it.
Yeah.
So honestly, the prior ordinance was horribly written. It confused matters between zoning, planning, and the actual completed or approved plans versus just an application being vested. So this lays it all out cleanly, I believe, with hard standards. As for the zoning board applications, when those are vested, that follows what you already had in the ordinance when the ad is published, or 14 days. Planning board applications are all when the certification of completeness is issued, which I think is the only way you can define substantially complete.
Any questions from the council on this section?
On the next page, on page 36, we talk about time limits for development. There are none in your ordinance right now. So for zoning board applications that are approved, what we had proposed was 9 months. You might want to extend that to 12 months, that they have to begin construction. There's a buffer there. It gives the applicant additional time if they can prove that they are pursuing state, and we need to include local permits, which delayed their construction.
So I think, listen, it's fine with
I know
giving
it's
them some
late.
relief, but at the same time, we do also have, Senator, if you like, snuck out. We do also have a bill, which if advanced would be, would, for these comprehensive permits, would make them effectively, within that specific time period, they have to go back to start one.
Yeah, so for the planning board applications, we say that they have to comport with the general laws,
Yep.
because the planning board statutes already have vesting periods within them.
So an example of this, for the zoning board, if a special use permit was granted to construct something that needed a special use permit, well, pick anything, just make it up, I'll use the gas station, for example. Special use permit was granted to construct a gas station, granted by the zoning board, this would say you have to at least begin construction within 12 months of that granting of that application, or you lose that, you lose that right. It's 9 months right now, but I think that's a little short, frankly, but that's a policy decision, so.
Can we make it shorter?
Well, you can't make it too short, because you gotta be,
Shovels in the ground in 3
No.
months, or are you gonna go back through planning all over again?
A little tough in the winter.
yeah.
What's that?
A little tough in the winter.
Just has to be a reasonable time.
It's gotta be
period.
reasonable. 9
months,
months,
baby.
I think 9 months is too
Considering-
short, I think 12 months is probably more reasonable.
It's 2026, we got modern technology. Get the hawk heaters out and start pouring. All right, any further questions as it relates to any of these items? I just want to make sure that Councilor Committo is satisfied with all of your questions that you had.
I'd like to thank everybody I mean, I learned a lot here tonight, so I really appreciate you taking the time to go over this stuff. I know we joke a lot back and forth, Todd, but I really do appreciate the work you put into this, and hopefully we can just iron out a couple of the small bumps that are in here to move forward.
Happy to work with you
Thank
whenever you want to, Mr. Committo.
I appreciate the help.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody that this entire package will finally be in front of us for a public hearing on April 27th. So we will get another bite at the apple. We can make some decisions on some of these changes where we have some control. With that, if there are no additional questions related to these items, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made, seconded by several. All those in favor? None opposed. We're now adjourned.